his way to the right and is tripped up, reaching to the end zone. Touchdown. What a start.
To Reed, and there he goes. Nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown.
It's caught. Jeremiah Smith. Touchdown, Ohio State. The legend grows.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast.
They can hear me?
Yeah.
That's a good start. Usually I'm the one who nobody can hear.
Okay.
So I'll just
everybody
translate everything Jared says on the fly.
Can everybody hear me now? Okay. Yep. I updated my software earlier, and of course that reverted my mic. Anyway, let's try this again. I'll cut this out later. Let's all pretend that did not happen, and we'll go through this. All right, welcome in, everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing Natty podcast. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday night here. We are back with our live draft streams here. I do this every single year. It's an absolute blast. Get on a ton of great guests. I got a great guest for you guys tonight. You guys know and love him. His name is Mr. Eliot Mays. What we are going to be doing tonight, we are going to be running through a 30-round, I call it a mock draft, but really it's a $5 best ball draft that we're going to be doing for college fantasy, full FBS, and we'll be talking through our picks, kind of talking some strategy, talking about the players that we're taking here and everything like that. But this is also going to be a time for you all there in the chat to reach out to us. This is a great time for y'all to kind of sit back, hit us with some of those burning questions that you guys have, and really, you guys drive a lot of the topics of the show. Like I said, me and Elliot, we will be sitting here talking about the players that we draft and everything, some things we see in the draft, but really, it's a very laid-back show. It's a ton of fun. I love doing this every single year, and like I said, have a great guest on today. Elliot, welcome onto the show, man. Again, you've been on CTN quite a bit recently, and of course, that meant I had to get you onto one of these.
Yeah, I always look forward to. If I wasn't on here as a guest, I would have certainly been one of the first people to sign up for it anyway.
Exactly. So, what do we got going on tonight? You have the 1-6 pick. I have the 1-9 pick. How do you feel about that?
I feel like I think you mentioned it on X the other day. Like you feel like you always have the same pick. I swear, I think I've been 6 to 9 every draft. The first couple of drafts of the year, I had kind of the tail end, like 11 and 12. But since then, I've been pretty much hovering right around that middle area. I think I've had one first round pick and one third round pick out of like 16, 17 drafts. So.
Yeah, I've been sitting here. I've been basically stuck in the exact same range, that 7-9 range. And let me tell you, I hate this range. I absolutely hate it. It feels like there's like a tier 1 of players that go off in like the first 7-8 picks. And it always feels like I'm like right before it gets to my pick is when that tier's done. So I feel like I'm stuck with my first pick being in that second tier. And then by the time it gets back to me in the second round, that second tier is like getting cut off right as I'm making my pick. So I just feel like I'm behind in this range. You kind of feel the same way when you're picking around this range?
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good like in that where I'm at, like in the sixth pick. But once I get to that like 8, 9, 10, I think that's kind of a bit of a dead zone for that first round. Once in a while, it just depends on how things fall. I mean, you'll get some guys that fall that deep that you wouldn't expect, and then it's just kind of a bonus. It's like a surprise. So
it definitely feels nice. I'm sure anytime you can pick up Anthony Hankerson in that range, you're feeling very, very good about yourself. Yes, we had to bring him up at least once in this show. I was told I was contractually obligated to bring him up, and you know what? I'm knocking this out before we get even into the actual drafting.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm in prime Hankerson position as far as the draft is concerned, but pretty much anything between the third pick and the 11th pick for me is prime Hankerson position. So,
and he is one of those guys that kind of varies greatly where he goes in the first round, right? Like, I think our first 3 picks are being pretty solidified at this point of like Jeremiah Smith, Desmond Reed, Darius Taylor. I think those 3 kind of go off in that order pretty much there. Mekhi Hughes was kind of in that range to start the year, but now he's kind of fallen out of there a little bit. But yeah, like after that, it really is just like your pick of the litter within that rest of that tier one. Guys like Bryson Washington, Dylan Edwards, Anthony Hankerson, we were just talking about. Jordan Tyson will go in there somewhere. And then things kind of immediately just get dodgy very, very quickly. Before I forget, let me go ahead and switch us over to the actual draft stream page, the fancy looking page over here where you guys can see your comments and everything like that. And this will be my time to remind you all to, one, if you are watching us for the first time and this is your first stream with us, well, first of all, welcome. Second of all, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Again, like I said, we'll be doing this, try to do this every Sunday. I won't be doing it next Sunday because I'll be out of town again. Life's been crazy for me recently, if y'all can't tell. But then we'll be back right to it the week after, and we'll be doing these pretty much every Sunday up until the start of the season, unless there's a holiday or something like that. So make sure you stick around for that. Make sure you like the video. Again, if we can get this trending, it gets us in front of the eyes of people who might be interested in this. I would also encourage all of you guys out there who are watching this to send this link to your buddies and making sure that they are able to join us. Again, we're all here. We're all just hanging out. I see a couple of people, or plenty of people in the chat already that I recognize. I see a couple of new names as well, though. Shout out to Michael Batkins. I don't think I've seen that name before, so welcome, Mr. Batkins. Glad that you are able to join us here. And then the other thing I'll remind you all of, as I mentioned at the start of the show, make sure you drop questions in the chat. Again, Ellie and I can talk about our picks all day long, but really we're here to help you guys out. So first question, I will say, Ryan dropped before we actually came live here. I'm not going to repeat the exact wording because there's some expletives that I do not want to put on my show. But he basically asked, why does Fantrax still have players who are in the NFL in the system still? And what I can tell you, and this was from Ryan Carpenter in the chat, and what I can tell you, Ryan, is a lot of it has to do with the player system, the player pool that Fantrax is reliant on. They themselves are highly reliant on school rosters, right? So when school rosters are not updated, they do not make that update here in the system, right? So you notice that a lot of the players that are gone are out of the system now, right? But there's still a couple of lingering guys here and there, and you can usually go onto those schools' websites and you'll see that those players are still on the school roster page, right? So, with that being said, again, that's all we got right now for questions. Again, if y'all got more questions, please throw them in the chat. It can be, what do we think about this player? What do you think about this player's value versus this player's value? Questions like that. Again, the world is y'all's oyster. Until then, we'll just be talking about draft strategy. Speaking of the draft, it is starting here in 10 seconds here. Mr. Mark Reagan, you are on the clock with the 1-1 pick. And Elliot, are you ready to do a live draft? Because boy, do I forget how fast this goes. We do have 1 minute per pick, just for everybody out there listening.
I'm ready. 4 hours. 4 hours per pick?
4 hours per pick. No, 1 minute per pick. And there we go. First person off the board. I just mentioned him, Desmond Reed, off the board. Elliot, who is your 101 pick? If you have the 101, it's not Anthony Hankerson, is it?
It's not. No, I would say Reed. Reed and Taylor are my two top guys, and Reed has been. When I have gone in the first position, that's who I've taken. So,
and there we have it. Reed, Taylor, and Smith, the first three off the board there. Not shocked at all that that's our three. Washington coming off the board here again. Let's just see if I can get anybody here to fall to me. I imagine you're not going to be so kind to me, Elliot. By the way, if you take a certain someone here, I lose $10. So,
well, if I was going to take Dylan Edwards, but Cart beat me to it, so.
There it is. There it is. I lose the $10.
We'll keep the ball rolling. So,
how many shares of Anthony Hankerson do you have at this point? How many drafts have you done, and how many times have you taken Anthony Hankerson?
I mean, you had him in Ethan's second best ball. I know Heath Boyd snatched him from one of the 5 Champion Series that we've done. But I've Clint Carlson even messaged me and he's like, I don't think I'm ever going to get a share of him. Am I? And I'm like, well, you might, but I have a total of 13
shares of Anthony Hankerson. Yeah. Oh my God. How many drafts have you done? right, come on, Skids. Make your pick, man. Running out of time.
Like 23, 24, something like that.
Wait, Kevin Coleman, is that you in the chat there saying you have I not invited you on one of these before?
I think we have a
we do have an auto there.
Auto draft there.
That is unfortunate. It says he's in the chat and or in the room and everything. I'm gonna go ahead and take my guy here because I got lucky and this guy fell to me. I'll take Jordan Tyson. Absolutely dynamic guy. I was worried about his injury earlier in the offseason. He says, "See, I wouldn't auto." You're right, Kevin. You're right. I need to get you, Kevin. Be expecting expect a reach out after this. Yeah, we'll have to figure out what's going on with Todd and everything. Again, it says he's in the room, so hopefully we get him pretty soon. Let's see. I believe Joe should be pretty attentive. I know he's trying to record a show with this as well. While we're waiting on seeing what's going on the back end here, what do you like about Anthony Hankerson so much that like makes you want to draft him everywhere you can get him?
It's really a lot about it is just the position that I'm drafting. I think that I'm leaning a little more towards Edwards over Hankerson, but like I'm strong on running backs for this first round.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much just, I've made a commitment there to do that. And so, if Reed, Taylor, and Edwards are all gone, Hankerson's my next guy. So, he's not my top guy, but he's a guy that I end up with just because of where I've been drafting. And if he falls down to the 10th or 11th pick, I'll take him there too. But I expect him to probably get 850, 900 yards, 12 touchdowns, 30 receptions, something like that. So I don't expect him to be huge, but I expect him to be for sure just consistent. You know what you're going to get from him.
Mm-hmm.
Their schedule is absolutely nothing. I think that I'm probably not the biggest fan of Malik Murphy, and I don't think that while he does have an arm, I don't think it's a very efficient arm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they're still going to rely on the run. I think the only issue I'm concerned with him is injury. But I expect him to get used. I expect a lot to get used as well. So, hopefully that'll take some of the burden off Hankerson.
Yeah, potentially. Again, I think my biggest worry with Hankerson would be that offensive line really struggled down the stretch last year. And so that if they haven't fixed that, now granted, I think they only bring back like one member off that offensive line, which usually is a bad thing, right? But when your offensive line was performing so poorly, you just might need a big reset in order to kind of get them to hop up to a second gear there, right?
Yeah.
So, I'll talk about my pick here real quick. I just made it Jaheim White. He's basically my version of Hankerson. Like, I think I've drafted Jaheim White a ton in the second round. I know a lot of people have kind of pointed out, like, oh, Rich Rod's, like, Trey Stewart was kind of an outlier to Rich Rod. Like, we can't draft White as if he's that guy. And I'm like, well, White's a really good back. Yeah, they brought in several other guys, right? They brought LJ Turner from Catalba. They brought in Ty Edwards from Northern Iowa. They brought in Jalen Knighton out of SMU. But, like, Knighton hasn't done anything in years. Ty Edwards, last time he was at the FBS level, he wasn't great, right? And then LJ Turner, huge upside, but it sounds like he hasn't done anything really in spring so far. So I'm not worried about any of those guys. White's clearly the main guy here, right? And Rich Rod, when he has a top-end guy, he will ride him all the way to town. And I think White would have transferred out had he not been given that opportunity. I think, there was a lot of smoke around the idea that some teams were trying to reach out to White and trying to bring them onto their roster. And so I think White would not have stayed if he wasn't about to get a lion's share there. I think he's a great pick in the second round. Let's see, who did you take? You took Damon Claiborne. What a great pick in the second round, in my opinion.
Yeah, we've got some guys dropping further than I would typically expect, which, it's great. So I'm happy about it.
One pick that kind of stood out to me, Purple Rain took Easton Messer there at 110.
He's jumping up.
That
He's going
boy, I know you're part of the Champion Series, right? With Mike Bainbridge and all of them. I know he goes decently high in those, like early second round and everything. Have you seen him go first round before?
I don't think I have. No, I've seen him like right at the beginning of the second round. I don't think I've seen him go in the first round yet. I don't think it's unwarranted though. If kind of where, I think he's probably wide receiver 3, if not higher, if things align the way everyone thinks they are going to. But in a best ball draft, I just my philosophy is um, a lot more. I'm not really targeting guys that are that. Let me get a pick in here real quick. That are that like uncertain. I'm kind of going for a lot of certainty with my picks. I am not somebody who in my best balls drafts a whole lot of upside. I do towards the end of the draft, but I would say through the first like 15 to 20 rounds, I'm trying to draft guys that I know are going to be the guy. And I don't do a whole lot of speculating in that range. So
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Oh, I'm on the clock. Go ahead and grab another running back. We'll grab Dylan Carson out of Air Force. That's kind of my thing, right? With
of course.
Yeah. That is my thing with Easton Messer, right? Is that if you're drafting him in the first round, you're drafting him with a lot of speculation, right? Everybody else in that first round that went here, Reed, Taylor Smith, Washington, Edwards, Hankerson, not Jeremiah Aaron there. By the way, Todd Skids, if you're listening, man, reach out to me and I'll replace him with somebody. I don't want your first round pick to be an auto there. But everybody else in that range had done something before. Messer's done something. It's not like he didn't produce at Western Kentucky, but definitely wasn't anything that you're sitting there being like, oh, I can't wait to have him in CFF. This is purely based on the system that he's playing in, the chemistry that he'll have with Caden Feldkamp, the hype that's come out of spring here. But I just don't think that really warrants a first round pick there. I was hesitant to even say that he really warranted a second round pick, but then I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, well, I'm willing to take Deion Burks in the second round. So if I'm willing to take Deion Burks in the second round, then I should be willing to take an Easton Messer, just because the upside with him's insane. Like you're talking 130, 140 targets if that system plays out like we think it will this year. So you took Lenora Sellers there at 3-6. He was somebody I had my eye on coming back here in the third round. I think he's fantastic to grab if he falls to the third round. What do you think? Obviously,
yeah. I mean, it's not a pick that I would normally make, but I mean, if he or Klubnik fall to the middle of the third round, I would Klubnik would be my number one target there. But I don't think you can go wrong with Sellers. Once again, I think it's outside of injury. I think it's a pretty much sure bet that he's gonna be the guy and he's going to put up pretty high numbers. I would expect him to be a top 10 quarterback no matter what.
No, I would definitely agree. Again, like he was top 3 quarterback the second half of the season. They do change offensive coordinators, right? But I highly doubt they're going to bring somebody in and tell them, hey, that stuff that we did last year that was like uber successful down the stretch and made us on the brink of a playoff appearance? Make sure you don't do that. No, they're going to clearly keep doing what they're doing with Sellers. I think it may probably run him a little bit less because, again, they do want to develop his passing ability and make it to where they're not solely focused on his legs. But I agree with you. He's a great pick in the third round there. I'm very happy to see that in this draft, there's only one quarterback taken in the first 2 rounds. Because personally, I think otherwise it's a very deep quarterback class. I don't think you need to reach up for a first round quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and take Elijah Surratt here as my second wide receiver here. I'm kind of going with a balanced approach here. 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs to start this draft. Normally, I'm pretty certain I usually have about 3 running backs right about now. There's one I could have taken there just a second ago, but I'm kind of curious to see where he goes when I'm not reaching for him. So we'll talk about him when he comes up. Who are you looking at here coming here in the 4th round?
I mean, it's going to probably be running back again, just because I want to lock down 3 kind of top tier guys or top end guys. I guess not all 3 of them are going to be top tier probably, but at least odds are they won't be. But there is one wide receiver that this is kind of the range I'd take him in, and he won't fall to the next round. So I'm considering that as well. We'll see what Skits does here, but
it probably wouldn't be too bad of an idea. All right. So we're going
definitely a lot more receivers going than we're used to seeing. It looks like he might be about to auto draft again. We may see illustrious pick of. Oh no, okay, never mind.
He got one in. He's in the draft. I think he said his queue properly now.
Okay.
So he also asked for Jaden Ott to be his first round pick, which I will. Yeah,
that'll work.
That'll work. So now that you're on the clock, which player, you can say the players' names now, so you don't get sniped.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the wide receiver that I like here, which is Ted Hurst. Receivers are going off a little quicker than I want, so I'm gonna push the running backs down the board a little bit and see if I can still land some guys.
I definitely have an eye on a couple of guys here. I recently redid my rankings, so it's like weird for me to look at my rankings again right now, being like, oh yeah, that's right. I technically am supposed to take him a lot earlier now than when I had him before.
I've moved mine around quite a bit the last week or so. I've spent some more time on it. So
you see, I'm trying to do this year. I'm trying to have a bit more analytics to my rankings. Like I'm trying to actually have some projections behind it a little bit. Maybe I publish those this year? I'm not entirely sure because I want to be confident in those before I start putting them out there and stuff like that. But it is very helpful, right? I think one thing that I got stuck in a lot last year was purely chasing volume, right? And I would see wide receivers that were set to inherit systems where, they're getting 100, 120 targets. And I'm like, oh, well, I just got to keep going after those guys. And if I keep nailing those guys, that's perfect. Until I started realizing hey, you should probably take into account that guy's probably getting 9 to 10 yards per catch. Right. And if you get 100 targets and catch 70 of them, if you're only getting 10 yards per catch, that's a 700-yard season. That won't fly for CFF. Right. And so I'm putting some projections behind it now. And it's definitely kind of helped me filter out some guys that I probably would have fallen more in love with in the past. Right. Guys like Paveli Ashlock, he's pretty far down my rankings right now because when I put his projections out, granted, based on what he's done over the last 2 years, it's not great. Trent Walker out of Oregon State's another guy that I'm I would have fallen in love with the volume a couple years ago. Now, not so much.
And as far as your projections are concerned, I would at least encourage you to do it. I know you kind of want to proof it out a little bit to make sure that they're on point, but just know that everyone's allowed to be wrong. It's totally okay.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be wrong on a lot of things this year. I mean, you've been doing this long enough to know that that's just part of the game.
Oh, 100%. Now, I'm not looking them to make them perfect or anything. I'm just trying to I haven't really gone through with a fine-tooth comb and making sure that I didn't accidentally type in the wrong number here or there, and somebody's looking at me being like, Jared, why do you got the 4th wide receiver at San Jose State projected for 900 yards?
I mean, if you were getting it too precise, you'd either be working for Vegas or you'd mysteriously disappear. One of the two.
That is probably very fair. By the way, Shane, I don't think Ott is actually in the system. I kept looking it up, and yeah, I'm typing his name in here.
They took him out again?
Yeah. This is I need to talk to Fantrax about this because they reached out to me, and I did praise them recently. Dang it! I was hoping I could get a 5th round De Rosier there. But I praise Fantrax because they have been actively adding in players recently, that they know we're drafting, so we don't have to use as many placeholders. But one thing I do need to reach out to them about is figuring out why guys who are already in the system are being taken out.
Yeah, keep bouncing.
And a lot of it has to do with the transfers, so I know it's them trying to take them out to update their profiles and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's just super weird. All right, I'm back on the clock here. Where do I go with this one? Again, I've got 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs. I was, again, really kind of hoping that I could get De Rosier to get him as my 3rd running back, try to get that home run hit there. All right, let's see where I can go with here. Quarterbacks. I mean, they're kind of flying off the board right here, and I am kind of surprised that Parker Navarro is not off the board. Yeah, I'll take Parker Navarro. I'll take a 1,000-yard rushing quarterback with upside.
This is by far the most balanced draft board I've seen this year, as far as just, uniformity between quarterback, receiver, and running back. It's pretty balanced.
Or like for your team in particular, or just like
No,
everybody?
just across the board. I mean, like, I think if you were to do some analysis on this first 5 rounds, the amount of quarterbacks and receivers going, not only just going in the first 5 rounds, but going where they're going in the draft, I think is a lot more balanced than normal.
I definitely agree. Ooh, Avery Johnson there in the 3rd round. So again, I'm as part of my projections, I am actively trying to consider the fact that, some of these guys do only play 11 games, right? And that unfortunately did knock Avery Johnson down quite a bit. I had him in my top 7 quarterbacks, I think, but then once I projected that out, I was like, ooh, it does kind of knock him down. And yeah, he's down to QB 19 now. So it feels wrong to have him that low.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm still a pretty big fan of his. I posted something on X not too long ago about kind of the way I look at it is I do care about the buys. I care about where they lie, especially when it comes to things like underdog best balls and stuff. But I look at it kind of more from like an effective buy perspective. And, he really has a pretty PUD schedule. I mean, it's not that, it's in the Big 12. It's pretty good. And the offense is going to revolve around him and Edwards. So I would have no problem taking him in the end of the 3rd round. I haven't taken him that high, but that's just because I'm usually not targeting quarterbacks yet in the 3rd round, but I've taken him in the 4th round.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and take my 3rd running back here, a guy that I've honestly taken as high as the 4th round. I'm kind of surprised he's still here in the 6th round, but I'll take Robert Henry here, the running back out of UTSA. I know some people have rightfully pointed out that system has been very committee heavy the last couple of years, but we did see Henry get quite a bit of workload down the stretch. Now you can point out and say like, oh, well, like they were literally running out of guys, but also Henry was earning those carries. Dude was hyper efficient last year down the stretch. I mean, he had multiple games of 150 plus yards to close out the season there. And if you look at that running back room now, if I remember correctly, they added John Emery Jr. They added not Kavorian Barnes. Who else did they add? Oh my gosh, I'm like blanking. It was somebody of no. Oh no, Amar Peterson from USC. They brought him in as well, but like I don't think they have a running back room really deep enough to really like split those carries up like that. And so I think Henry will come back again. There was a question of whether he'd be back or not. He's back. He could have transferred out, in my opinion. Another guy that I'm sitting here wondering, like, would he even be back at UTSA if they weren't set to give him the lion's share like he had at the end of last season? He's not going. He's like, let's be real. Henry's not going to the NFL, so he's not saving himself for anything, right? So why not have one last great season at UTSA and put himself in the history books for them? So now that's a lot of narrative street for sure, but I'll take narrative street in the 6th round. What do you think about him, Eliot? Well, you just took his teammate.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, I like McGowan. I think this is probably one of the furthest down McGowan's gone for me as far as just total number of quarterbacks that have gone before him in most of the drafts. So I took the value that I saw there. I think as far as where he's going in the 6th round, middle of the 6th round, I think that's okay too. But just a lot more quarterbacks flying off the board earlier than I expected. But we've got a lot of sharp guys in here. I mean, you obviously know almost every single one of these guys, and I've drafted with them a ton, and they all know what they're doing. So no one's going to get away with anything.
No, absolutely not. And I will say, again, the quarterbacks are kind of coming off the board pretty early here. You've taken 2 quarterbacks with your first 6 picks. My personal opinion, like I don't think I've ever taken 2 quarterbacks in the first 6 picks. Like, did you feel the pressure with how many guys are coming off the board? Like, I personally think the position is still pretty deep, even though they're coming off the board pretty quickly.
No, actually, it wasn't a pressure pick. What it is that, when I see, so first of all, it was a value pick there. I felt like there was a good value there, but I also, I look at the way the board's coming off. I would expect this next round because I guess it's Brandon took Veltkamp too, but because we're the only 2 who took quarterback there, I doubt anyone's I would expect somebody to take quarterback here in the next round, or at least a handful of guys, but because round 7 is kind of where things start to pivot a little bit.
There's definitely one quarterback I'm surprised is still on the board. I have to imagine he'll be coming off here in the 7th round. Otherwise, I might take the shot on him, even though I have questions about him. Like you said, it would just become a value pick at that point. But also, round 7 through, I'd say 11 is where I've typically done most of my damage at quarterback. I usually grab one quarterback in the round 3 to 6 range, if the value's right. Like with Navarro there, I think got him what, sixth round, a 5th round, even better. That was like you said, that was a value pick for me. But I wouldn't be surprised, again, depending on who's here in the 7th through 11th round, if I'm not hitting quarterback pretty hard here and just trying to get a super awesome. You guys can tell I'm out of practice. Get myself a really sturdy quarterback room here pretty early on in the draft. Get 3 or 4 guys, and then probably take two upside shots later on. I'm trying to wake up, y'all. I promise. I just got tea covertly delivered to me by my beautiful fiance. By the way, I guess this is where I guess I haven't made this announcement to everybody, but I am engaged. So
congrats.
That's fun. That's where I was 2 weeks ago. I was in New York and got engaged. So
it's a good excuse.
Pretty good excuse. So sorry for the lack of CTNs recently, but been doing that. Then we went on a family vacation the very next week. So my head's been spinning in order to get all that taken care of. All right, Carp going with the double tab at the Boise State running back room there. And you are taking Zach Palmer-Smith. So you're buying into the Zach Palmer-Smith hype here.
I'm buying into the system, and yes, I would expect him to get that nod, at least as of right now. But this is the most speculative pick you'll probably see me take in the next 5 rounds. So,
but given the fact that you've played it so safe, I think you've earned yourself a speculative pick, right? And if it's somebody you believe in, a system you believe in that much, then yeah, why not take the shot? I just, again, I know that a lot of the guys over at Fantasy Points are really big on Zach Palmer-Smith, and I do agree that we should give him the edge, given the fact that we have, oh man, I almost got Mateer there. That would have been so good. I think we should give Zach Palmer-Smith the edge just because of seniority, right? Over a guy like Deshaun Ford, who is coming in with a lot of hype for UL Monroe. And according to the beat writer, like Ford will be the guy this year. I don't know if I fully believe that. But I do think right now it's at best like a 50-50 shot just based on the information that we have. So I've been hesitant to move Palmer-Smith up my rankings. Currently, I have him. Where do I have him at? It's like RB. Where are you? RB 61. Now, if I start feeling a little bit better about that, let's see. I move him up. So he can move as high as RB 30-ish, and I think that's about as close as I can get to preseason before I've actually seen him do anything for that system. You know, unless we get to the fall reports and it's just completely and utterly, there is no doubt he will be the number 1 back kind of deal, which can happen. We've seen that happen before.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got him at 37, so I don't have him as high as some, but I know Josh has got him a little higher than that.
So, all right, two San Jose State wide receivers coming off the board there with Matthew Coleman and Danny Scudero. Has there been any actual buzz behind Scudero outside of the fact that he's just not Matthew Coleman?
Yeah, I mean, they have talked about him. They also sat him out of some, I don't know if it's a spring game or some spring practices because they're trying to make sure he's not hurt. I mean, there's just some things that kind of line up and point towards the fact that he's going to be a big part of the offense. And if you look at him, like his build, his skills, like if you watch his tape from, what am I drawing, like Sacramento State?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good. He moves extremely well. His route running is phenomenal. He just seems like he'd be a better fit for the slot position there. And I think that's where the hype's coming from. I think the 7th round is too early for me. I mean, I took him in like my 3rd draft of the year as like a last round, one of the last 2 round picks. And he's just been every week, every draft has been just kind of bumping up further and further every time.
Yeah, again, like I think it comes down to which beat reporters you believe. I can't remember if it was Jackson Moore over at 247 or another beat reporter, but I distinctly remember reading a report where he was talking about how, again, your top two guys at San Jose State this year are Matthew Coleman. And you might say that, like, oh, well, he's not paying attention to the transfers, but he distinctly named a transfer as the second wide receiver for San Jose State. It was not Danny Scudero, it was Leland Smith, who he said would basically take on that Justin Lockhart role, which, by the way, for everybody listening here, I do think Leland Smith is a fantastic shot towards the end of drafts. I don't think I've really seen him drafted at all so far in drafts. And again, if you're telling me, hey, I can get Justin Lockhart type production towards the end of a draft, I think you can do far worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are the three guys you're going to see on the field the most, for sure.
All right,
and I think they can support two wide receivers pretty easily.
Absolutely, it's just a matter of, do they split that 170 targets? Maybe they run 4 wide receiver sets, and maybe both Matthew Coleman and Scudero are out there all the time. Then again, they got Keenan as pretty good at tight end, so.
I think if you believe in Scudero, your thought process is that Coleman's going to be pushed to the outside.
Mm-hmm. And that would make sense, right? Because isn't Coleman like, what, 6'2" something? Like he's
just over 6 foot, yeah.
I would say
he's pretty slender. He's pretty light. He's like 170, 175 pounds, but he's just over 6 foot.
By the way, just a fair warning to everybody, when you look up Matthew Coleman, make sure you put San Jose State afterwards, because the first Matthew Coleman that does come up is not a fun story to read. Let me tell you that.
Also, Jared, just FYI, I'm not seeing any of the chat as far as the YouTube chat. So if there's anybody that's directing any questions or anything specifically to me, I can't see it. It's a little too fuzzy on my screen.
No, totally fine. And I've been keeping an eye on the chat. We have had a lack of questions tonight. So I will tell all of you guys out there that, again, Elliot and I love talking about our picks and everything, but man, oh man, we love answering your questions as well. So if y'all got questions, hit us up with them. So I will say, one thing I'm noticing about myself in this draft, I'll throw it over to my team over here real quick for a second. I'm going more wide receiver heavy this draft than I typically do. I don't think it's been a long time since I made it to the 9th round. I only have 3 running backs. So this will be a fun exercise for me to try to find some value late at running back that I don't normally have to go looking for. But the value at wide receiver was kind of falling to me again. I don't normally see Dejon Stribling coming off the board here in the 7th round. Chris Bell is my man there at Louisville. I'll happily take him in the 8th round here. A shot at the top outside wide receiver for Jeff Brom. I know a lot of people are really big on Colin Lacey, and I don't blame him. I think he's a pretty good receiver, but I will say, when I did projections for Colin Lacey versus Chris Bell, I gave them both the same number of targets, and boy, does Bell come out a lot better than Colin Lacey does. So, just something to keep in mind for everybody out there when you're looking at Lacey. How do you feel about that wide receiver room after you make your pick, obviously?
I mean, I still like Bell slightly better than Lacey just because of his production last year. I know that Lacey's obviously a talented individual, and I think he's going to be their second. I wouldn't say second option. I could see them as a 1-2, like kind of 1A, 1B option. But I personally like Bell just a little bit better because of him coming off a fairly successful first, last year. So. Lacey's coming out of injury, so it's just a little less predictable.
No, for sure. Although, again, Lacey looked really good in the spring based on all reports. Yeah. So, alrighty. Oh, I'm going to grab a guy that I have. How is this guy still on the board? Did something happen here? I'm going to take Justice Haynes out of Michigan. He's usually off the board in like the 3rd, 4th round. I didn't realize he was still on the board. That's crazy to me. He's not even my next running back up on my rankings, but I'm just going to take the opportunity to go ahead and take him here because, shoot, if he's the RB1 for Michigan, I'll take that shot. I'm just going to double check. There's not like a duplicate player in here, is there? No
one's taken him yet.
That's crazy. I've seen him always go off in like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. All right, now we got some questions rolling in, Elliot. So you ready for this?
Sure.
Ode asks, how do these Scott Tadpole drafts work? So, I'll I'll run through that real quick. So basically, the Tadpole Bowls are going to be the college version of the Scott Fish Bowl. If you've never done the Scott Fish Bowl before, basically it's a massive tournament, kind of similar a little bit to the underdog tournaments where you're placed into your own little pod of 12, and then the top 2, 3, I can't remember how many make it out of each pod. There's in-season management, so you're going to be setting your lineups, you're going to be doing your waiver pickups and stuff like that, right? But basically the top 2 teams out of each pod by a certain week move on to the playoffs, and from there things kind of dwindle down until there's only one person, right? There is a $20 entry fee that is all towards charity, so you're donating to a good cause with that. It's Power 4 only. I believe the only scoring changes compared to regular leagues is that it'll be 6-point passing touchdowns. That is a Froton special. And then I believe they are also adding the return yardage, which I'm actually excited to take a look at over the next couple of weeks. Because again, I've just got done doing a lot of my projections for the major positions. And so that'll be fun to start doing. That'll be fun to start looking at here as something new to look at. Just to repeat, it is not best ball to the best of my knowledge. So you will be managing it in season. All right. Clint asks a question, and this is directly towards you, Eliot. He says, does Eliot draft more off of rankings, or are you more of a get my guys type of drafter?
I would say both for sure. I definitely have guys that I favor. If I have one flaw, I mean, I have lots of flaws, but if I have one flaw, it's absolutely not diversifying enough across, multiple drafts, etc. So as an example, if Hankerson doesn't perform, there's going to be a lot of teams that I have that are going to be hurting because of it. So that's just one example, but that he's not the only one. So there are definitely guys that I tend to favor, but I tend to favor them because I'm confident in them. I think that they're going to be, more hit than miss. And I think when you're dealing with best balls, you could look back, especially in these early drafts, and you can see like out of 30 picks, you may have gotten 10 right. And so my goal is to get more right. I want kind of a giant shotgun blast of hits as opposed to just chasing upside and having, 30% of it, actually come to fruition. I would rather have, 50, 60% do something because those misses can really come back and bite you when you have just a poor week.
For sure. All right. I just went ahead and go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but regarding my rankings, yeah, I do follow my rankings. Every draft I get into, I upload my rankings in beforehand and operate off of that just to make sure that if something does fall, deep, that I can, sweep them up. So.
Yeah, no, I have one league. I created my own league in Fantrax that is me, myself, and I. And that is where I do all my rankings changes. And so, like, once I make a change on my spreadsheet in my rankings, I go in there and I change it there. That way I can just copy it into each league that I join and everything. That way I don't have to
That's one way to do it.
Do the uploads and stuff like that. Because Fantrax can be finicky sometimes with those uploads.
I was going to say, well, actually, if I was going to say that I like what you're doing there, but I've had a lot of issues just with the dragging and dropping in that window and the ranking window too. So like that would drive me nuts. So
definitely never do it on mobile.
Well, no, even on a PC or a Mac, it struggles a little bit for me sometimes where I can't get it to scroll or I'll place it somewhere and then all of a sudden the player disappears and it's at the bottom of the list, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Go ahead.
But yeah, no, I pretty much always upload them and operate off of that.
You are having a theme tonight, sir, of taking teammates of players that I just took. You took I took my Ava, you took Lane. I like Lane as a talent. His projection did not come out as well as I thought it would. Right,
he's touchdown heavy for sure.
He was very touchdown heavy last year. Are you hoping that continues? Do you think he just has a really good connection with Mayava down in the red zone?
I mean, I am hoping. Yeah, I am hoping that it continues, obviously, but I would expect him to. I mean, bottom line is they're going to have 2 targets there, and I suspect that their offense is going to be just as good or better this year. And, they're going to have to put up points to win. I know their defense was a little bit better last year, or a lot better last year, I should say. But they're still going to have to put up points. And Lane is kind of that touchdown ball hawk kind of guy. And, but you're right. There's a bit of speculation, and there's an absolute chance for some regression there back to the mean with with his actual stats.
All right, we got another question here from Mr. Koki. He says, do you think Easton Messer is way overvalued? Didn't dominate last year with Veltkamp, even though WKU's other wide receivers weren't great. Looks like a slow, unathletic slot wide receiver. I'd take the under on 80 receptions, 800 yards. So we touched on Messer earlier, and I do think that, again, first round, even early second round, I do think that that's getting rich for my taste, especially on such a speculative pick. I do think that there are a lot of things that are lining up for Messer. I mean, clearly I have him ranked very high. I have him as my wide receiver 6 currently. And if you base it solely on what Messer has done, I mean, if you assume that he's getting the 115 targets, I've got him projected just by himself based on what he's done alone. Because Mr. Koki's argument is that, again, Messer himself is the problem here. He's caught 73% of his targets over the last 2 years, and he's averaged 13 yards per catch with those. That's good enough if you give him 115 targets for 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. That'll do in CFF. If you go based on the system, it's actually a little bit worse for him because the slot wide receiver for Zach Kitley the last couple of years has averaged 11 yards per catch. So you probably finish somewhere in the middle there around 12 yards per catch. And again, that gets you right at about 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Again, I think that's more than good enough for Easton Messer. I think he followed Veltkamp for a reason. I think there's a very good connection there. If you thought Western Kentucky's wide receivers weren't good last year, I can tell you that FAU's wide receiver room is even worse than that. I think there's plenty of room for Messer to have himself a really good season this year. You have anything to add, Eliot?
No, I mean, I'll just kind of echo what you said, but also just repeat kind of what I said earlier, which is, I mean, everyone who's got him as high as they do, they're banking on the volume. They're banking on the fact that the assumptions that are being made with Kitley coming in, with him kind of running the show offensively there. I mean, and everything they're saying, in practice reports and interviews and stuff leads everyone to believe like, yeah, that's the route they're going to try to go. Whether they succeed or not is a different story. But I think that it's worth rolling the dice for sure, in my opinion, in the second round. The first round, it kind of concerns me a little bit just because I think you're losing out on some potential running backs that I also think are pretty important and valuable. But is he overvalued? For sure, based on his history, but we're not drafting him based on his history. We're drafting him based on what we think is going to happen.
I pretty much agree with everything you said there. I'll comment on my pick here real quick. I took 2 quarterbacks. I kind of made fun of you earlier, Eliot, about how you felt pressure to take quarterbacks because they're flying off pretty early. Well, here I am, and I'm looking at the quarterbacks still on the board, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not as good as I thought it would be. So I'm gonna go ahead and I went ahead and took 2 quarterbacks and 2 systems that I trust greatly there with Maava and Ty Simpson. I think Simpson's being undervalued right now. I probably took him pretty far decently ahead of ADP. Let me see if I can find him in ADP real quick. Definitely is not the 11th round. I've definitely seen him go much later.
It's a little bit early, but looks like we got our first placeholder with
yes,
Joe in Purple Rain.
Yes, actually not too much. Ty Simpson's been going off late 12th round, so I guess I got him a smidge early, but not too much. You took your second tight end there with Matthew Lauder and Eli Stowers. Are you just going to not draft tight end the rest of the way? Because I think you got 2 pretty solid guys there. I don't think you really need to reach for a third guy.
I'll probably draft a third guy towards the end of the draft somewhere, but I was anticipating, based on what I saw, a lot of tight ends coming off, and I was correct. And so I'm glad I did, because for me, there's a pretty big drop off after him. Mm-hmm. And in my tight end rankings, as far as just tiers, the rest is fairly speculative.
The funny thing is, Eliot, you say that there's a big drop off and everything. The guy that I have projected the best for tight ends is still on the board for me.
I could probably guess who it's going to be. He's still probably at the top of my tight end rankings right now, but and he'll definitely perform if it's who I think it is. We'll see.
We'll see. Again, I'll probably go ahead and take him here with this massive run of tight ends that's going off here. Good Lord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good Lord, that's a lot of tight ends that are coming off the board. So yeah, I think I'll go ahead and grab it. No, Ben, it is not Mr. Rocky Beers as much as I want it to be. Oh, God.
Yep.
God.
Actually, maybe you shouldn't be on this live, huh?
No, that's just how this goes. And I
totally expected him to take a tight end too, and I was like, watch this happen right here.
Yep. That one hurt. It's fine. I don't get any of my saved tight ends. I'll go and I'll still grab a tight end here. I'll just go a guy that I have highly projected. So we'll see. We'll keep it going with the questions here. Heath Boyd asks, thoughts on Stribling and the fantasy points bros siding with Caden Lee? I've gotten Stribling in the teens the past 2 drafts and champions. I do think it's kind of crazy that Stribling's sliding a little bit. Again, I grabbed him in the 7th round. I thought that's the best value I've seen him at. I'm kind of surprised Stribling's going into the teens in such a great group of players as the Champion Series and everything. Here's the response that I don't think anybody's expecting me to say, and that's that I think there's room for both to be great. I have Stribling as wide receiver 15. I have Caden Lee as wide receiver 21. I think that this ends up being an offense where both of those guys end up getting fed. The outside wide receiver for Ole Miss has been the guy, but Caden Lee really showed last year that he can do some serious damage out of that slot, and he does not need a lot of volume to get there. On 75 targets, which is what I have, I have him projected for 75 targets, and at 15 yards per catch over the last 2 years, and catching 77% of his catches, in addition to the fact that the slot receiver for Ole Miss the last couple of years has caught 75% of its targets and averaged 14.7 yards per catch, that ends up with a projection of 75 targets, 57 catches, 872 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That's that's more than good enough for CFF purposes. And so I think both Lee and Stribling end up doing very, very well. I don't fault anybody for taking shots at either of those guys. I've gotten shares of both of them. Where do you kind of fall there, Eliot, on Stribling versus Lee?
I actually I'm also a Lee guy. Like, I have Stribling ranked fairly close, but I think there's I wouldn't say a certainty factor, but a little more of a confidence rating on my ranking with Lee than there would be with Stribling. Stribling, it's just a lower confidence rating. If I were to apply one to it. I had a lot of shares of Lee last year, and he didn't blow anything up, but he definitely was one of those guys that you could count on. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's going to change. I'm fairly high on Simmons as well, so I think that he's efficient enough in that offense to probably get the ball spread around pretty well.
No, I'm in the boat where I think both of them are going to do great. I think Simmons is a great pickup. I think he's going very cheaply in drafts compared to where he was. You just made a face there. What pick warranted that face?
I mean, I'm a fan of Keyshawn Brown from Duke, but that's a little higher than I would normally take him. And he's one of those guys that, like, I have a lot of because I didn't expect him to be. I mean, it's not like he's not well known, but at the same time, I didn't expect him to go that quick.
I mean, I think people are starting to catch on to the fact that Jordan Moore was pretty productive last year and had a ton of volume, and you got a much better quarterback there, in my opinion, this year with Darian Mensah than Malik Murphy. So he showed out last year. He's definitely got a decent ceiling with him.
I guess you could argue that face is just jealousy then, I guess.
There you go. We'll keep it going with the questions here. I do want to catch up on these here. Donald Giebel asks, is it okay to wait on tight end until round 20 or so and then just take 3 or 4 shots at the end? None of these guys outside the top few are that exciting. I have numbers to back that up because, again, I love that I did projections this year because it really helps me have like some numbers to back up my feelings on some of these things. Of all tight ends, Eliot, how many do you think I have projected for more than 100 fantasy points this year?
I mean, I would guess 2 or 3.
It's actually 8. One of whom might be injured the whole year, and that's RJ Maryland.
Yes.
But Gillenborg, Stowers, Jolie, Sadiq, Royer, Reynolds, injuries. Those are the only guys that cracked top 100. Lauder's very close.
This is under a 1-point PPR?
This is on half-point PPR. I base most things on half-point PPR. I'm on the clock. Ooh, dang it. Gleason came off the board. I was kind of hoping you'd fall.
Speaking of which, if anyone watching is wondering, as far as just scoring rules for this, we've got 30 rounds active. We've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. It is a 4-point passing touchdown league and half-point PPR.
Yeah, I should have read that off at the beginning. You see, I'm out of practice, so I appreciate you doing that, Elliot. To finish your question there, Donald, yeah, after those guys, things drop off very quickly, right? Again, like Traore projects decently well, 80, 87, Bosma 85, but very quickly, by the time you're getting to like tight end 24, you're down in the 70s, and all these guys start blending together very, very quickly. If you want to take the strategy of just missing on the top guys and then waiting until the last like 5 rounds and just hitting tight end after tight end and just shooting for high upside with some of these guys like some high upside guys I might take shots on later in drafts are guys like Landon King out of Duke, Daquan Wright, Ole Miss, Gabe Burkle out of Iowa State. If one of those tight ends go down at Iowa State, I think he could end up being a big one. Like guys like that might be people I might take a shot on at end of drafts, but like, yeah, if you miss out on the top guys, just wait. Yeah, you're gonna feel like you're reaching on the rest of them. Let's see. Another question about Ole Miss. He says, "What do you think about the third wide receiver? Is it gonna be Odom or Wallace? Doesn't matter." I'll throw that one to you, Elliot. What do you think?
I mean, and I haven't seen many third wide receivers coming off the board for them. I think I don't think it matters. Not to be kind of a Debbie Downer, but I don't think they're going to be able to support 3 from a fantasy relevance perspective.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree. And I think, again, Lee and Stribling, I think will be your 2 guys that are out there the most. And then I wouldn't be surprised if like Wallace, Odom, and whoever else they have in that wide receiver room is kind of rotating that third spot more often. So you're not even getting the snap counts that you really want there. I'll throw this one over to you too, Elliot. Who is the Syracuse wide receiver to own if you had to pick one?
I mean, Gill, for sure. He's their burner. He's their deep threat guy. He's their big play guy. And I think he's got the skills necessary to be a fairly high volume guy too. It's a pretty bare cupboard, to be honest, outside of him and Jonte Cook. And I mean, they've got some talent coming in there, some younger guys, but Gill's the one that I feel, like I said before, I have a higher confidence level in him. Cook is just a little bit, as Bainbridge puts it, a knucklehead. I have trust issues with him, I think.
All right. Do I want to load up on quarterback here? Or do I want to take running back? It does start to drop off at running back here, so I'll go ahead and take Lincoln Pear.
Also, one of my later round snags that I've been able to get, like, I think the first and second draft I did of the year, I had him as my last pick in both. Mm-hmm. That's not happening anymore.
Nope. And honestly, I'm not even pretend like I discovered this or anything like that, but like, it's one of those things where I completely honestly forgot about that backfield, and then I added him to my projections, and all of a sudden those projections looked really, really good. And I'm like, there's not really anybody else in that backfield that I'm looking at and thinking like, hey, you could be the guy for Texas State this year. And so, yeah, he quickly shot up my rankings. Let me see, what do I have him projected at? Lincoln Pear, running back 26 for me. I'll
take him as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll take him as a wide receiver too, for sure. Well, dude, look at his running back run going off here. The whole dang round's red. Good Lord. Yeah, I got him projected at...
Those last three picks were my top of my queue too. So
yeah, I got him at 23 receptions, 1,257 total yards, and 12 touchdowns. So I'm liking where Mr. Pear is headed. By the way, Donald, to answer the question on my end about the Syracuse wide receiver to own, I think Gill's the safest pick. I think he'll inherit that Jackson Meeks outside role. Like Eliot said, who else is that going to be? Cook's a knucklehead, but Fran Brown, if there's a coach on this earth that can kind of reel in a guy like Cook, I think Fran Brown is one of those guys. He's always been one of those coaches that's been able to kind of reach guys like that. So I'm hopeful for that. And then two, like Cook in that slot could be extra dangerous, right? Like again, he's still got the talent of a borderline 4 or 5 star wide receiver. And so if he can kind of put things together there, I think that he could be very, very good there. His ADP is not very high at all. I've taken a shot or two of him in recent drafts. So I think both of those guys are worth taking because, again, they're the only real two options. It's just the real question with Syracuse, I think, is do they run the same system they did last year? And that's a very, very big question because I think there's a very good chance that they could switch things up this year. But also, they don't really have much in the running back room. So, who knows? Let's see. More questions here. Benjamin Jacob asks, thoughts on the Iowa State running back room, Jared? Mr. Benjamin, there is not a player on this planet that I am more out on than Carson Hansen this year. Carson Hansen had 151 carries, 752 yards, and 13 touchdowns last year. That touchdown rate is insane for a guy getting that few volumes. You're talking about like borderline every 10 touches he got with the football, he was getting a touchdown. And that doesn't even include his receiving work, right? Like dude had 15 touchdowns on 164 touches. That's absolutely insane. And in a committee backfield, which this will continue to be, I don't think that's going to happen again. When I projected him out, he is so far down my rankings, I was actually kind of shocked. But at the end of the day, he projects out to about 12 receptions, 768 total yards, and 7.5 touchdowns. Maybe you bump up those touchdowns just a little bit more, but the top back for Iowa State over the last couple of years has averaged over 12 games, 140 touches, and 15 targets. That is not volume that you can count on for CFF. So I'm just out on Iowa State backs this year. I'm not trying to chase up that tree anymore. What do you think, Eliot? Am I being too harsh?
Too harsh now. I mean, I don't think I have any shares, but it's not that I wouldn't have any shares. Probably not where he went in this draft. I thought he went pretty early, 7th round. But you know, he's somebody that I'd consider kind of in this round, in this realm. But I'm a Campbell fan. I like Iowa State. As a Nebraska boy, I've always kind of had a fondness for their system, but you know, I get it. There's got to be some pullback from that efficiency, but you know, then again, he needs to be the if he's fed, I think that's probably what's going on here is that people are anticipating that he's going to get fed a little more consistently. I mean, he had 3 games? I guess he had 4 or 5 games over 10 rushing attempts, but I mean, really only 4 rushing attempts that even were close to 20, 4 games with rushing attempts to 20. So, I mean, yes, he's highly efficient last year, but if he gets more volume, you know, you could expect similar touchdown numbers at the very least, I would think.
It's just a matter of does he get more volume, but pretty much everybody in that backfield returns. So it's not like there's, you know, additional carries for him to get unless one of those guys gets hurt. If you're counting on that, then I think you're, yeah. Let's see. Any more questions in the chat? We did a quick question on who the Syracuse quarterback will be. Eliot, what do you think? Angeli or Ricky Collins?
Definitely Angeli from my perspective. I don't think it's even a question. You know what, that could be clipped and in a couple months, and I look like a fool. But I'm pretty confident that Angeli is going to get the job.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's kind of interesting, I just took Gray out of Liberty, Julian Gray. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the big quote-unquote cheat code that a lot of people have their eye on is Mr. Adam Randall over here, who Greg took there in the 10th round there. Eli Heidenrink came off there. Another name I'll throw out there is Chris Johnson there at SMU. I like TJ Harden there at SMU, but I don't think it's a non-zero chance that Chris Johnson could end up becoming the main back this year at some point, considering that he's had previous history. Rhett Lashley there coming over from Miami. Is it me or is there just a lot of potential cheat codes, especially with that running back wide receiver designation this year? Did I lose Eliot, or are you in train of thought?
I'm digging into something right now here.
Oh, good. You see somebody still on the board that you're like,
No, I'm just trying to plan ahead a couple rounds here.
Okay, all right. That's kind of what I'm doing too. I gotta make a decision here on which position I want to tackle next. I think I'll go ahead and hit quarterback again. I think. How many quarterbacks do I have? I have 3. Actually, let me check something that I am not always very good at checking, and that's my bye weeks. Make sure I'm not choosing guys all with the same bye week. And it looks like, running backs, I got to chill on week 9. That is something to note. I got 5 running backs. No, 6 running backs. 4 of them have week 9 buys. Yeah. So I gotta check. I gotta keep myself checked on that. Are you doing well in bye weeks over there, Eliot?
My receivers are the only one that I'm concerned about, but I think by the end of this, I'll have enough volume that I shouldn't have to worry too much about it.
Gotcha. Also, by the way, appreciate all the questions that we've gotten here over the last 20, 30 minutes. Again, that's the kind of stuff that I love talking about with you guys. Again, if you see something interesting on the board, call it out. We'll talk about it. Brett says, is Haynes King's shoulder healthy? As far as I'm concerned, yeah, he should be good to go for next year. I don't really think there's much of a question of whether or not he'll be starting. All right. There's some good wide receivers still on the board. But there's some good there's some guys that I like.
I'm just kidding.
Let's see. Quarterback. Yeah, no, I'm gonna chase. You know what? I like the idea. A lot of people talk about stacking quarterbacks and wide receivers. Man, I'm the kind of guy. I love stacking, especially in college fantasy, stacking quarterbacks and running backs, man. If you can get a duo where you just monopolize every touch that an offense is gonna have, you're doing good. So I'll take Markeel. I'll pair him with Jalen White there, or Jaheim White, excuse me. I'm feeling a lot better about that. And then we'll see what falls to me. And then Castellanos comes off a couple picks later. That's a good pick by Ryan there. That's the other quarterback that I was considering. I know Froton was kind of poo-pooing on Castellanos recently, but Castellanos coming off as QB 30, 38 to 45. That's a good upside quarterback to pick as your 3rd or 4th option.
I think his argument is primarily that he's not good, short and sweet, but I think it's a size thing. A running quarterback at his size is, the chance of him getting injured is pretty high. So we'll see what happens there.
But there isn't really an injury history with Castellanos. Again, he quit last year because Bill O'Brien refused to use him like he should. I don't blame Castellanos for dropping out mid-season because Bill O'Brien was trying to turn him into something that he wasn't. Your boy Messamaker came off the board. I thought you were going to take that upside shot at one point here.
I would have for sure. It's about maybe a round or 2 earlier than I would be comfortable doing it. But once again, I'm at the point now where I'm probably taking an upside on my next quarterback upside pick, just because I've got 2 guys that I think are going to be high performers, and then I've got 1 guy that has got a good floor. That's kind of and so I've got Sellers and McGowan as my kind of 2 consistent top end guys, and Pavia as my floor guy. So
like the pick there from Mark Reagan there with Jeremy Bernard there in the 17th round. He was somebody that I was keeping an eye on. By the way, I see some people talking about Jamie French there out of Texas and assuming that it is a placeholder. No, not a placeholder. French is I think he might be a 5-star on some recruiting services, but he's a freshman. Yeah, that's a legit pick there. He could make his way into the rotation this year. I personally wouldn't bet on that, considering I think, well, Moore came off at the 14th round. Mosley's still on the board here, so no, French is not a placeholder. That's a legit pick there by Brandon. And Shane asks a couple of questions here. He says regarding our conversation regarding Castellanos, he says, who's he throwing to? Depending on how this board falls, I might be taking who he's throwing to here, because I actually really like where that's falling in terms of who's the best wide receiver, in my opinion, in that room, who typically gets the targets in Gus Malzahn's system. I might be going for a Florida State receiving option here soon. So, and then Shane also asks, what do we think about the Arizona running back room? I am team Riscano. I am not drafting Ishmael Mahdi. I think that is a very unfortunate situation where he's transferring up and he will not be the main guy at his new school. What about you, Elliot? Do you like anybody in the Arizona backfield?
Riscano's for sure the guy that I tend to favor there. I would anticipate both to see the field, but I would expect Riscano to make capture the bulk of the carries there.
Let me see what my projection for Riscano is. I got him as RB 56, and I got him projected 160 carries, 36 or 35 targets. So that puts him around. It puts him right about 30 receptions, 1,070 yards, 10 touchdowns in total. And again, granted, I've knocked him down a little bit in terms of a confidence rating because again, Mahdi is there, and so I do think that warrants knocking him down just a little bit. But I project him pretty well.
Yeah, he hasn't really been drafted a ton. As far as the drafts that I've been in. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were mentioning the Champion Series. He's only been taken up two of 5 of those so far this year. And, one was like the 26th round. The other was probably 25th or something.
How often has Mahdi been taken?
Let's see here. He's been taken in every single one, and in the Champion Series, he's gone off in every Champion Series draft, and in a pretty consistent fashion, around like 14th, 15th round, something like that. And if I'm not mistaken, it's been a pretty. I know Moxley's taken him a few times. Yeah, Moxley's kind of leading the charge there. Okay. With 3 of those drafts.
Alrighty. All right, I'll take a shot on my upside wide receiver or upside running back picks. I'm going to go Kirby Voorhees out of Washington State. That's where I'm kind of planting my flag now for the Washington State backfield. I initially liked Angel Johnson, but boy, does that injury news really scare me off of him. And Voorhees performed really, really well. He's a younger guy, but he projects extremely well. I've got him slated for 170 carries and 30 targets. That's kind of what the top running back in Jimmy Rogers' system has done at South Dakota State the last couple of years. They do tend to focus in on one guy. They do have quite a few options there, but they do, again, as the season goes on, they do tend to funnel it all to one guy, and I think Voorhees ends up being that guy down the stretch, and feel pretty good about that. Do you have any opinions on the Washington State backfield?
No, I mean, I still favor Johnson personally. I don't think it's a big stretch of the imagination to think Voorhees is next man up. I think that's pretty obvious that he's the other guy in the backfield that we should pay attention to. But I get it with the injury news, but I mean, I would expect him to be back by fall camp and hopefully ready to go.
All right. Brett asks in the chat, what do you guys think of the Nebraska receiver room? Bacon. I just literally called you Bacon. Elliot.
Sorry.
Do you have an opinion? you respond to Bacon? I believe it.
Yeah. So I actually, as a Cornhusker myself, I want to see a powerful fantasy relevant wide receiver. I think Nebraska is going to have a good team. I think they're going to be a well-rounded team. I think that offensively speaking, they have really good targets. They've got the biggest thing holding them up was their play caller. With Holgerson coming in, like it was a different offense for sure. Just from a points scoring basis for Nebraska last year when he took over the reins. So I anticipate, it to be pretty solid, but my issue with them is I don't see any one receiver just outperforming everyone else. I think Dane Key's probably number one, although Barney is probably another guy that you should keep in mind. But Hunter, somebody asked me this a while back, and my response was effectively like, it wouldn't shock me if all of them have like 450 yards on 45 targets, blah blah blah, and pretty much all the exact same stat lines. And I think from a Cornhusker fan perspective, that's great. And I think from a fantasy perspective, probably not so great.
I'm trusting in the Holgerson system. There's going to be a wide receiver one at Nebraska, even if they have multiple options I think they can work with. I think they're going to throw more this year, which sucks for my Emmett Johnson shares, but
he'll get the ball out of he'll get some receptions too. I expect him to be one of the leading receiving running backs in the league this year.
I will say though, let's just say I was very mad about this pick right here. If y'all can see my cursor, I was very mad about that pick right around that range. And let's just say we have it on pretty good authority that Keene will be the wide receiver one. And that's not my story to tell as to where that news comes from. But pretty dang good authority that Key's going to be the guy.
Yeah, I would second that 100%.
So now, does that translate into a Tank Dell type season? I don't think so. Again, my projections don't really bear that out. Because
I don't see a receiver on Nebraska going over 1,000 yards this year.
I've currently got Keene projected at 876 and 7.5 touchdowns, and that's over a 12-game scenario. So if they play a bowl game, I could see him breaking 1,000 yards in there, right? I think
they don't play a bowl game, that's a problem.
Yeah, true. Santiago Silvestre, first of all, welcome, sir. I don't think I recognize that name, so welcome to the stream and everything. And he asks, I was watching behind and just catching up on the tight ends conversation. You don't like Tanner Koziel? He was tight end 1 and he's getting a QB upgrade at Houston. I totally understand why people might take a shot on Tanner Koziel. Again, he's going late, right? He just went off there at the 18th round. Who took him there? Todd Skids took him. If you like him and you just believe in the talent, yeah, absolutely. Sure, go for it. My rankings or my projections don't bear that out hardly at all. He took a pretty big hit there. I currently have him as tight end 41. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that if you project him for 50 targets, which is honestly more than what we've seen out of the last couple of years with Slade Nagel's system there at Tulane, I'm getting a projection number of about 37 receptions, 319 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A big thing holding it back is the fact that for all of our love of Tanner Koziel, he has been heavily reliant on volume because his efficiency is in the gutter for tight ends. He's been averaging 8.8 yards per reception over the last 2 years. Like, it's all been volume with him. Now, otherwise, like, if he can get that volume again, great. Maybe Houston does that for him this year. He obviously landed there. I highly doubt he goes anywhere that they're not going to use him. But as of right now, just based on pure statistics, I don't think Koziel really has a huge path to finishing, top 12, even top 15 tight ends. What about you, Elliot? Do you have any thoughts on Tanner Koziel?
I've taken him a handful of times, but it's always been as like a tight end 3, or I haven't been in many drafts where I've had to draft 4 tight ends, but I have had one, and he was my tight end 4 there. So there's another one of my guys that I've been all over this year, and I'm not thrilled with not being able to get him in the round 29, 30 anymore.
All right, let's see. More questions there. Donald says, think I've heard on one of CC pods that a lot of people don't believe Cosio translates athletically outside of the MAC. Again, I would agree. Again, his efficiency has not really been there. Heath Boyd says, saw Purple Rain took Ray Joseph. Any concern that Tony Johnson runs the slot while Malachi Tony gets up to speed? I don't think there's a soul on this planet that knows what Miami's going to do in the slot, and that includes the coaching staff for Miami. I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. I think they've got some options. I still think the safest pick to take is CJ Daniels, and I like the value that he's been going at recently there. Again, 18th round in this draft. Again, we know that they can produce with an outside wide receiver there, so Daniels could end up being that guy. But in terms of who's going to be in the slot, I couldn't tell you. Eliot, do you lean one way or another?
Not really. I'm not. That's one of those, like you said, one of those rooms where it's straight up speculation at this point. So I just have to stay away from it until I get some more data.
All right. Again, I'm shifting my, not philosophy here, but I'm shifting my mindset, because usually by this point I would have almost been done with my running back room. I might be looking at maybe taking 1 or 2 more guys, but I still got 3 running back slots to take a look at. And so I'm trying to figure out who some guys I can fill this room with. And again, was it my running backs that I got to be careful with the bye week? Yes, it is. I cannot have week 9. Yep. Let me just double check. Oh, that takes out Riscano, unfortunately. That takes out Elijah Green. Dang it. Those are a couple guys I was looking at there. So y'all feel free to take those guys now. You can push down some other guys for me. That does leave 2 guys up, and Buffalo's listening. He took my advice and went ahead and took Riscano, took him off my hands there. All right, Brian Gray says, I can only keep 5. Who do I trade out of this bunch? So he has Singleton, which I assume is Nick Singleton, CJ Baxter, Darius Taylor, Haynes, which I'm not sure if that's Shamal or Justice Haynes. Oh, it's Justice Haynes. I see his comment now. So Justice Haynes, Caden Durham, or Isaac Brown. I guess the easy answer is if you have somebody in your league that thinks Baxter is going to be healthy this year, trade Baxter. Like, do you need me to read off those names again, Eliot, for you to give your opinion?
Yes, please.
So he has a lot of like round 1, 2 guys, and he can only keep 5. So Nick Singleton, CJ Baxter, Darius Taylor, Justice Haynes, Caden Durham, Isaac Brown.
Yeah, I mean, Baxter is the one that stands out to me is the easy guy to liquidate.
Yeah, again, if you can get somebody to buy on the idea that he could be healthy enough to start this season, then he's the guy to go.
Which isn't too far-fetched, but I do think, here in Austin, the talk is definitely that Wisner's going to be the guy.
All right, let's see. More questions here. Shane says, what do we think about Calandria with Mullen? Elliot, what do you think about him?
I mean, he's somebody that I kind of, when Mullen took over that job and he went there, I mean, I know a lot of people were talking about Orgy as being a contender, but I just don't see that. Like,
absolutely not.
It's probably a lot of smoke and nonsense, but I think it's worth taking a shot. As a running as a quarterback like 4, quarterback 5, somewhere in there. I don't think it's unreasonable. Calandria
is one of my favorite upside picks of the late rounds, right? Because like, if I look at my projections for him, let's see, where is he at? Calandria, where are you at? I have him just baseline quarterback 60, and that's with a 20% down, like a 20% reduction on him, just because, again, he's not been named a starter. There's a possibility that Orgy gets packages and stuff like that. It's Dan Mullen's first year, right? New system. So I gave him a 20% discount. without that, he projects just baseline for 275 fantasy points, which, let's see, what would that have gotten him last year? 275 fantasy points would have put him at QB 20 last year. So, like, that's a very good baseline, I think, for Calandria. And if you can take an upside shot like that in the 20th round, why the heck not? Brett asks, any update on the Arizona State running back room situation? I think the big thing is that Kanye Udo is not winning that job currently. Now, does that translate to Kyson Brown being, Cameron Scattaboo? No. But does it mean that I have not drafted a single share of Udo at this point? Yes. So I think Kyson's your guy to draft. I have him ranked, I think, RB 30. And I do think he's going to get less of a share than what, obviously, Scattaboo got last year. I think they will try to split it up a little bit more. That's what Dillingham's whole deal was before he got there, and why I wasn't always super in on Scattaboo. But yeah, no, I think Kyson Brown, if you got to go with one, it's him. What do you think, Elliot? Or you're making a pick right now?
I've actually taken some Udo just because I like him. I've been kind of a supporter, I should say, of him getting the job, but as kind of one of my guys. But at this point, I'm taking him fairly late and kind of taking him more so as a I told you so pick, or possibly I told you so pick. But I don't have a high level of confidence in it at this point. I think that he's got the skills to do it, but I'm not on the field with them, so I don't know what the rest of the team is putting on the field. But Kyson Brown is probably the guy that's going to get the nod. But I'd like to see Udo play. I think he's talented.
Mm-hmm. All right, interesting, because Ott is in the player pool in a different draft, but he's not here. That's super, super weird. Also, Brian, I just realized that I missed your thing saying that this was a modified C2C league. I still say Baxter, but I understand why you're a bit more hesitant now to trade him away, because he does technically still have some NFL upside. Colton Laster asks, CJ Campbell or Antoine Raymond for Rutgers backfield?
Raymond.
You lean. I lean Raymond as well.
Yeah,
I'm going to lean towards the guy that's already there. And Campbell very much strikes me as they're bringing him in as a change of pace back, right? Give him the third down option that they really couldn't get with Kyle Monangai or anybody in that backfield last year. It is right, in my opinion, to point out that Raymond, when he did get the opportunities last year, wasn't super efficient, but he's a freshman. I think he'll get better. I think he'll still be that bruiser for Rutgers. It's still a running back room to invest in, for sure. Raymond's value has definitely dropped over the last month, I would say. He was going as high as like round 4 or 5 sometimes. And then where did he go in this draft? So I can find him real quick. Raymond, where are you? Can't see. Where is he? Am I blind? Somebody help me find where Raymond is. I see Campbell, but where's Raymond? Oh, there he is. 512. 512 is not too bad.
Raymond?
Yeah, Antoine Raymond went 512.
Oh, I see. Never mind. For some reason, I must have been looking at the wrong line. I saw him as 6'1", but.
So 512, I think, is like that's fine value for Raymond. When he was going early third round, I was like, it's getting a little rich for me. But now that he's kind of fallen down a little bit, I think it's fine. And then why not take the shot on CJ Campbell later if you already have Raymond and just handcuff him? I think that's more than fine. Let's see. I got 8 running backs, 8 wide receivers. Still need 2 quarterbacks. Let me see if there's any good upside. There's a couple good upside guys that I could take shots on here late. I'm on the clock. Shoot. Yeah, shoot. We'll go ahead and take the new guy. We'll take a guy from the new teams here, and Joe Nathan Silver out of Delaware. Very efficient running attack there. Doesn't need a lot. So Ben asks, Jared, thoughts on the Tennessee running back room? Feels like an under-talked room. Well, I did just take a guy from there in Deshaun Bishop there, and I do think it is a bit of an underrated room. I do think that they're certainly not going to give any of those guys in that backfield any kind of treatment like Dylan Sampson got last year. Dylan Sampson was a very unique talent to Tennessee. You could kind of see that one coming for a while, considering the fact that he was having like monster games when he was like a freshman, and none of the guys that were behind him with Bishop or Lewis or even Star Thomas have really had games like that. So I like Bishop though. I got him projected pretty well. Again, based on the last couple of years, like averaging out like Sampson's season and the 2 seasons before that. He still projects extremely well for me. I got him as RB 32. 185 carries, 25 targets. Bishop himself's been averaging almost 6 yards per carry his last 2 years, so I think he's got potential upside to earn even more carries as the season goes on, so I like him quite a bit. What do you think, Eliot?
Apologies, I was coming up on my pick there. I was grinding here. So if you don't mind rephrasing the question, or not rephrasing it, but just repeating it to me.
Tennessee backfield. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bishop's the guy, but I also agree it's probably an I wouldn't say underrated, but undervalued position group right now, just because you've got none of those guys are being drafted highly. So I mean, I think you're getting a good value. I think you probably would agree with me on this. It's probably not a backfield that's going to get Sampson-like production. It's going to be split. It's in some form. It's just a matter of how much volume they're going to, shove down the running back's throat, which I think is a little up in the air with the quarterback change. So, I think the system is going to support a fantasy relevant running back. I just don't know where they're going to finish. And I think that drafting him as late as you're drafting him, why not?
If they do go to that 1A, 1B scenario, right? Who would you rather have as like that 1B guy? Are you thinking Peyton Lewis, or are you thinking Star Thomas, who they brought in from Duke?
I like Lewis over Thomas, but
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Thomas as a talent. I think that was a bad transfer, and I think it was a bag transfer.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was money, and I think that from Tennessee's perspective, probably more of just a depth move.
Oh, 100%. All right, let me ask you, Eliot, because we haven't talked about your picks in a while. I think it's been since like round 13. All the questions started coming in, and so we haven't really actually talked about our picks. You're making a pick right now, but like between rounds 16 and now, who are your 2 favorite picks that you've made?
Between 16 and now, so 2 that I'll probably or 1 that I'll talk about. Favorite is probably my 16th round pick, Coy Eakin. I just think that, we're still going to get some volume out of that receiving core in between him and Douglas. I think it's pretty much a coin flip from my perspective. So for me, I can justify that. Let's put it that way. One guy that I'm actually starting to I could be wrong here. This is a little bit of speculation, but I've been starting to draft Salter, and I don't think anyone else has really been drafting him, or at least not very frequently. But he's a guy that I could see surprising a lot of people. And so for me, being able to land him as like a quarterback 4 or 5, which is kind of where I've been taking him the last several drafts I've done, to me seems like an easy upside shot. He's got talented receivers. He's at a school that honestly still doesn't have much of a defense. They have, they're also in a conference that doesn't have much defense, period. So I could just see a lot of shootouts, especially in a best ball format. I'm not sure that he's a guy that I'm going to rely on heavily in a regular season, but a spot start for sure. And he's one of these guys that, if you look at what he did at Liberty and compare that offense to what he'll probably likely run here, it's a lot simpler. The there's a lot less kind of motion before the snap. There's a lot more kind of obvious 1-2 read type, 1-2 read, check down or run kind of things. And I think that actually benefits him and his performance. I know he didn't have a great year last year, but I'm not convinced that wasn't just halfway because he was checked out. But we've seen his talent. We've seen his skill. I know that a lot of people don't think he has a great arm, but I would disagree. I don't think it's a phenomenal arm. I don't think it's top tier by any means, but it's serviceable for sure. And I think when you give him tools around him to throw to, and put him in a position where he kind of has to, and make it a more simple offense, I think that bodes pretty well for him to perform pretty well, especially in these 4-point passing touchdown leagues. He'll get the volume on the passing touchdowns, I think, just because of where they're at. Certainly not the same volume that they had under previous players, but it'll still be there. And then to have a guy that can take off and run it is phenomenal. And quite frankly, their running back room has been a crapshoot for a couple of years now. So it's I wouldn't doubt that he's kind of the number one rushing touchdown option on the team.
No, I think that's a very good argument for Salter there. I think the main thing holding me back and other people back is they can't run the same offense that they did with Salter that they did under Shedeur Sanders. So it's kind of the same thing as how, like, my reservations about CJ Carr at Notre Dame, like that, right? Or Syracuse as well, where they can't run the exact same system. So it's like, what are we going to get now? Especially with a coordinator or a head coach that we don't really know what their other option is. We don't know what else is up their sleeve. And so it becomes a matter of can they and will they with those quarterbacks. So again, getting here 18th round, again, I agree. Like if he was going as high as the 12th round, 13th round, where some of these other guys are going, I'd be a lot more hesitant. Speaking of which, I'm on the clock. I'll take another tight end here. Let's go Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame.
I like him as well. So your two tight end picks that you just threw down are two that I really, really like. Mm-hmm. Traore is one of those guys that I think is at the risk of bumping his ADP here. I think he's way too low on most people's boards. I think that Mississippi State gets him the ball often.
I mean, they don't really have a lot of other options, right? Like the entire receiving core basically transferred out. He's the only one left, and they brought some other guys in, but like Jeff Levy's not been afraid at all to use the tight end in the past, and Traore might be the most receiver-like tight end he's ever really worked with, and so I think there's a decent chance that he could end up doing really well. He projects well for me. Let me see what I got his projection at. He's currently tight end 9 for me. And
okay. You get him pretty high then.
And his projection has him at 38 receptions, 444 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So again, none of these tight ends are really popping off the board like some years past. My highest rated tight end has 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. There's no Dallin Holker here. There's no Brock Bowers. There's nobody like that I'm projecting this year. It's a very weak year at tight end. Ben says, how does Traore still have eligibility? And I will say magic. Shane asks, does Wysong lead the Arizona wide receiver room? And I will say no. I actually have hardly heard anything about him at Arizona this spring, so that leads me to believe that he is not going to be the guy. I'm starting to warm up to Chris Hunter. Again, he's another guy that once I plugged him into my projections, he came out looking a lot better than I thought he would. Now, granted, I put some confidence ratings on him that lowered him down, but even with that, right, where did I put him at? There's Chris Hilton. Where's Chris Hunter? Hunter. There he is. He's wide receiver 54 for me right now, but that's with a 10% discount on the confidence meter. If I took that away, he probably would bump up to wide receiver like 25 for me. Like, again, now granted, a lot of this is boosted by Ted McMillan over the last couple of years, right? But
I like Hunter though. He's somebody that I kind of had pegged as somebody just to kind of watch out for. And then I saw Bainbridge take him a couple times in some early drafts and towards the end of his draft, and that just helped validate my thoughts on it. So I have no problem kind of leaning that way as far as him being the top target. Somebody's going to get the ball there. It's not like they're going to stop throwing it.
We are getting inundated with comments about Chris Hudson being there at Arizona. And here's the thing: I like Hudson. I think he's a pretty good receiver and everything. I do need to add him to my projections just to see like how that kind of shakes out. But right now, again, those outside receivers in that Brett Brennan system typically are the ones that are fantasy relevant. They have the efficiency. They are the ones that usually get the volume. So that's why I'm more interested in Hunter. But Hudson's a good enough receiver that if Hunter falls apart, like Hudson could easily just win the number one wide receiver job just on being the most talented, or not even the most talented, just the best wide receiver in that room. So Ben just said my name and then nothing else. So Ben, I'm not sure why you wanted my attention, but spit it out. Let's see what's going on here. Real quick, I keep saying in my head, like, remind everybody to hit the like button, and I think I've said that like in my head like 3 times over the last 5 rounds. So I'm gonna say it now. If y'all are watching, if you've not hit the like button, please do so. It's free. It helps us out a ton. Would really appreciate it. Again, it helps us get us in front of the eyes of people that normally wouldn't be looking for stuff like this. So make sure that you are doing so. Donald asks you, Eliot. He says, what does Bacon like about Pribula? You just took Pribula.
Yeah, so, that's I knew I was going to get some sort of comment on that one. So I actually just think that he's kind of a little bit underrated right now. I think the Missouri offense is one that has the ability to have a really high floor quarterback, and I think that's exactly what he's going to be. I don't expect him to be even a top 30 quarterback, but I do expect him to be pretty consistently around that 20 to 22 20 point range maybe. Mm-hmm. But he's, especially in a 4-point passing touchdown league, his legs are something that are very enticing to me. And from what I can tell from watching him both at Penn State and just watching film on him and hearing, kind of discussions around, the players that have played with him and coaches that have coached him, he really has that kind of it factor, that kind of, I would say similar to like a Pavia, where he's very just like, he's going to make it happen. He's going to get it done type guy. And to me, that actually goes a really long way in college fantasy football, not so much in the NFL, but that can take you a pretty long way in college fantasy football. And I think Missouri, with the amount of, just players they had on the offense leave, I think there's a void there that needs to be filled, and I'm banking on him filling that void.
Yeah, my projection for him is a little weird. I was just taking a look at it. So currently, no, I mean, like there's stuff to like about it, right? Like, raw projection, he projects at 257 fantasy points for me, right? So like last year that would have gotten him, let me make sure I'm not on the clock. All right, we're good to go.
It's like 21 points, something like that.
Yeah, so like in total points, that would put him around quarterback 34, which I could absolutely see him landing in.
Kind of where I expect.
And so, now granted, I gave him a 20% discount because, 1, we haven't seen a full season of him. 2, transferring to a new system and everything like that, right? I also, so like part of my projection for quarterbacks does involve their touchdown rate, because I do think that's pretty important for quarterbacks, like how often are they throwing the ball. His passing touchdown rate is absolutely insane, and it's just not something I considered realistic, so I did bump that down a little bit. And so like that might skew the projection here a little bit as well. But like my projections have him throwing 15 touchdowns, both system-wise and personal-wise. So I think that's kind of the cap, is like, do you think he can beat 15 touchdowns passing this year? Now, granted, I have him rushing for 9 touchdowns. So yeah, anywhere between 6 and 9 touchdowns is what I'm thinking for him.
Yeah, and you're gonna see me kind of my upside quarterbacks were the first two quarterbacks that I selected, as opposed to kind of the back end here, where you're gonna see the majority of the guys outside of Salter, which I guess you could argue is more of an upside play, potential upside play, but my quarterbacks at the backside here, because of drafting Sellers and McGowan and me being high on them being top 10 quarterbacks. The quarterbacks I'm going to select here at the back end are probably going to be more floor guys. So it's not that I'm super high on them, that I think that they're just sleeping giants that are going to crush their ADP or anything. It's more of a floor play.
I'm the opposite, where like I try to take safer guys earlier on, and here I am drafting Connor Harrell and Brad Jackson. Technically, two guys who are still in a quarterback competition, but boy, if they win those jobs, like you're talking about two guys that could easily rush for. They could rush for 1,000 yards at the quarterback position. We got a question regarding the Michigan tight ends, asking, is there one worth taking? And I think I just want to had both of them in here. But I currently have Marlon Klein as my tight end 23. I currently have him projected for, 55 targets, 36 receptions, 375 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So nothing crazy. No Colson Loveland on this roster, in my opinion, but that's probably the guy I would lean towards. What about you, Elliot?
I mean, I've got Hogan Hansen ranked, but I'm not super high on. I mean, you would like to think, just from a system play, that it's probably a good idea to have him on your roster, but I don't know who that guy's going to be, so I've stayed away.
All right. Damn what?
Let me ask you a question. Out of just drafting so far, is there any team or teams that you've looked at and been like admiring? Let's put it that way.
I haven't
paid attention to it.
Not too much, because again, I'm looking at the chat. I'm looking at the draft board. I'm looking at my own stuff like that. So usually I try to wait towards the end and kind of look through and see if anybody stands out. Sure. Shane's also asking about Iowa tight ends. He says, guess Iowa guys suck too. Yeah, honestly, because Estrangea is not athletic like the previous tight ends that Iowa's had. And if Gavin Hoffman was still there, I'd be very interested in him, but he's off of Missouri now. So, yeah, there's not really anybody in Iowa that I really like right now. Let's see. We're in the final 4 rounds here, Elliot. Again, what do you look for when it comes to upside? Because this is upside range, right? Like, you're taking you're not looking for a guy in this range that's going to get you a safe 700 yards and 5 touchdowns, right? You're looking for guys that had the potential to be league winners, or they just do nothing, right? Boomer, the old cliche of boomer bust picks. Like, what do you look for when you're looking for guys like that?
Yeah, I mean, so like I typically do that with my receivers, but I honestly, like I said earlier, when it comes to my running backs and quarterbacks, I'm still looking for floor guys at this point, which is I'm probably in the minority there. But it's worked for me over the years. So it's a kind of a strategy that I'm going to stick with. Wide receivers have such a low hit rate, and they're very sporadic throughout a draft that that's where I'm willing to take a little more of a stab. But I'm basically, even at this point with my running backs, I'm still looking for a guy that's just going to consistently produce. So I'm looking for guys that are, starters basically on their team. So like right now, I'm going to take a shot on Leland Smith and just see if he's that guy, see if he's that number 2. I would expect him to be the number 2 guy, but the good news is he's probably going to be the number 2 guy no matter who is the number 1 guy. Does that make sense? So, I think there's a fairly, I wouldn't say certain level there, but there's a fairly high confidence level that he'll be kind of the number 2 receiver there. So at San Jose. So
in a system that's going to throw a 400 plus times, right? Like, yeah, just grabbing the guy that already has his position locked down. Why not? Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where like wide receiver, man, like there's a lot of good options. And so I think I'm going to wait on that. I typically go 6 quarterbacks, 10 running backs, 10 wide receivers, 4 tight ends, and kind of maybe plus or minus 1 from that. but there's so many good wide receivers still on the board that I think I'll wait and just kind of see who falls. And at tight end, there's not really guys that I really love, so I'll go ahead and just grab one of my favorite guys, Rocky Beers. I'll take a shot on the Jay Norvell tight end one any day. I know Jackson Warren's still hanging around. Yes, I know he's very talented, but boy, coming off a season-ending injury, like.
I like the Beers pick. I also like the Pimpton pick from
TCU.
Joe.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's somebody that's been kind of a I wouldn't say consistent tight end 3 for me, but it's definitely somebody that I think has got the potential of producing.
I still got to take one more running back, so I'll see. Maybe that might be who I take my shot on here.
This is my favorite part of a draft, to kind of see where people are, and we've got a great group of guys here. So I'm expecting a bunch of running backs to come off the board in the next 2 rounds. So this is kind of the running backs that I'm interested in seeing who gets drafted.
Jeez Louise. I'm running out of bye weeks that I can do with running backs here, dude. Because I have 9 running backs, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 of them have week 5 bye. 1, 2, 3, 3 of them have week 6 bye. 1, 2, 3 of them have week 11 bye, and 1, 2, 3, 4 of them have week 9 bye. So I'm just like, I think there's just gonna have to be a week where I'm just gonna have to. Actually, no, you have your Ben just mentioned it. You have your bye week guide. Can you find me any running backs that have really good weeks in week 5, 6, 9, or 11?
5, 6, 9, or 11. Let me get through my pick, and I might be able to.
This is my pick, so I guess I gotta grin and bear it. Oh wait, here we go. I got a running back I like that has none of those bye weeks. We'll go Jordan Brunson out of Miami of Ohio. What do you mean partial homer pick, Ben? There's nothing homer about any of those guys. All right. Shane asks, what do we think about Nixon at UCF? I like Miles Montgomery better, but the problem is that if you look at the recent history when it comes to Scott Frost, there's just not really an RB1 that you really want there. So I think it's going to end up being committee. And all of us people who have shares of Jaden Nixon and Miles Montgomery for all these years are going to end up being sad little beans. So, Elliot, you made your pick of Connor Weigman there. What are your thoughts on him?
I'm kind of pegging him as a little bit of a bounce back this year. I'm not super high on Houston, unfortunately, but once again, a team that I think is going to have to put up points. I think he'll be the center point of that offense, and they're in a conference that just quite frankly is terrible, defensively speaking. So that's the short answer.
If I remember correctly, he projects pretty well for me. I was kind of surprised by it. Yeah, I got him as QB 44. And that's with a 20% discount because of, returning from injury, transferring to a new system and stuff like that. But like raw projection, I got him at 288 fantasy points.
All reports basically say that he's, like, from an injury perspective, is back.
Yeah, and that's why I got him rushing for 105 times. I think they'll run the ball with him quite a bit. Like, I know Dean Connors is there, but Dean Connors is not a guy that's made to run the ball 180, 200 times like a season. Right, so I think Weigman will get heavily involved there. Stacey Sneed's still hanging around. Like, I think that's where Weigman's potential comes from. I mean, just look at what Slade Nagel was able to do with Michael Pratt for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of some teams you should target for your bye week dilemma, let me pick here real quick, and then I'll spit it back over to you. This will be my last running back pick.
I wanted to take him so badly, but boy, week 6 and week 9 buys were just not it for my team right now. That's a great pick.
All right, so you need to target guys according to my tool from Kansas, Houston, Louisville, Virginia, Colorado, Iowa State. Those are kind of your top options.
That's a depressing list.
I know.
Let me just say that's a depressing list.
I mean,
thanks for nothing, Elliot. I'm joking.
There's not a whole lot.
No, that's a great tool, by the way. Like, kudos for you for bringing that up. Here, I'll solve my running back dilemma here by potentially getting another cheat code here. This is a fun one for me to take a shot on. That's Javen Jacobs. Nobody in that backfield there.
Vanderbilt Cedric Alexander, is he still available? He might be a good option there. They've got week 5. You've got Utah State 9. They've got Missouri and Auburn. That's not great.
He's still around. But I'm off the Alexander train at this point. By the way, Ben, I see you talking about Hassan Wilson there in the chat. I do like Hassan Wilson. If I remember correctly, he projects pretty well for me. Where is he? There he is.
Actually,
66.
you know who? Yeah. Let me see if he's still up. I'm sure he's still there.
Jeez, my top running back on the board.
Oh, never mind. He's not. I was going to say Rocco Griffin would be a good option, but he's gone.
Nope, he is gone.
All right, went a while ago. I missed it.
We're on our last pick here, so I'm just gonna take my top wide receiver that's still left on the board and call it a day. Because I haven't taken a wide receiver since round 20. Good lord, I loaded up on those guys early. I guess technically, again, Javen Jacobs has wide receiver eligibility, so I can count that. What do I think about Montgomery at East Carolina? I think East Carolina has a very crowded running back room, and that I don't really know how that's going to shake out. That's just my opinion on the Pirates. All right,
I concur on that one.
I took my top wide receiver still on the board and just calling it a day.
I'll be taking my last tight end and pairing it with my Pribula pick.
Ben, by the way, I would have taken Wilson there if I didn't have technically 11 running backs on my team already. So, but I took Blackstream, which that's pretty good value there at late. And you took your last tight end there in Norfleet. All right, we're finishing up here. I can't believe I made it through. I've done these before early in the off season where I start falling asleep towards the end of the draft. So glad to see that the caffeinated tea pulled everything off here. Carp took Trig, took my boy. Technically not my next highest tight end. All right. As things kind of finish up here, Elliot, some of these guys could come off the board here and everything, but what I do like to do sometimes, especially with the guests, we just drafted 360 players for college fantasy, deeper than really most NFL drafts go and everything like that. And the crazy thing about college fantasy is there's still usually a lot of really good guys still on the board, even at the end of a draft like this. So I will ask you, quarterbacks, who are you kind of surprised is still left on the board?
Some guys that I still... So Retzlaff is one of those guys where he's still on the board because of his legal issues.
Mm-hmm.
But Angeli is somebody that I'm surprised is still there. Once again, probably more because of the 4-point passing touchdown scoring. Jacob Clark is another guy that I really like, that I think in a 6-point passing touchdown league should be gone. Those are kind of the guys that stand out to me. I mean, Jalen Daniels is another guy that I have taken as my 5th or 6th quarterback a few times. But once again, he's a risk with his injury situation. Like, he always seems to be injured. Outside of that, there are some good quarterbacks, guys that I just think are solid quarterbacks. You're like Luke Altmaier, etc. Like, good floor guys, but probably not going off the board in a lot of leagues that are full FBS.
Yeah, Luke Altmaier was going to be my number one guy that's still on the board. I think he's, like you said, he's the ultimate floor play. I don't think he's going to be a guy that wins you the league at all, but I think if you're looking at a guy that week to week will get you that 20 points, he's that guy. Aiden Child is another guy I'm looking at here. Gunnar Stockton at UGA. I mean, again, if Carson Beck was able to, reach the top 35 quarterbacks, I think a dual threat quarterback at Georgia could definitely get there. Dylan Raiola, I'm kind of surprised nobody took the shot on him there, right? Again, Dana Holgerson's system.
Just a zero rushing upside with him. Like he's mobile to the extent that he can break a tackle, and that's about it. I'd like to see him kind of increase his mobility a little bit, but another guy that I missed and kind of left off the list is a guy that I like and I've taken as my sixth quarterback is Chuba Purdy at Nevada.
Oh yeah, good call.
Somebody that I think is probably undervalued.
Running backs. Again, I'm looking at my list. There's not really anybody on here that I'm like super surprised didn't come off. I will say I'm surprised nobody took a shot on either of the two options at San Diego State with Christian Washington or Byron Cardwell. Because again, like we've seen Sean Lewis have a workhorse back in the past. Now, granted, we've also seen him go by committee, but that's another one of those situations where I don't think they have enough backs there to do a committee approach. I think they have 4 scholarship running backs, maybe 3. So, like, if they're going to run the ball, they're going to have to give a guy a bunch of carries. Peyton Jones at Duke might be interesting if you think that he can get that workload like Star Thomas got last year. Nolan Ray at Maryland might be interesting. Rahul Faisal, but that's almost entirely due to the fact that he was, he's dealing with the legal trouble right now of whether or not he's going to actually be able to play this year. But Donald Giebel says in the chat, Siobhan Wright, which I know, I can't remember if it's Heath or Clint. One of them has been drafting a ton of Siobhan Wright in the Champion Series and everything over the likes of Telly Johnson and Jalen Poe there. Do you have an opinion on that?
No. I if I spoke on it, it wouldn't be educated enough to coherently have an argument put together.
Ben, Faisan's in legal trouble not because of anything he did, but because there's
eligibility
wise. So, but yeah, Faisan, he is having trouble on that front of whether or not he can play at South Carolina this year. Any running backs stand out to you as you're surprised they didn't come off the board? I think for the most part, this group did a pretty good job getting value at running backs.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot left. I mean, maybe Jordan Newben,
Newben did not project well at all. Like I was kind of intrigued with him earlier in the offseason because I'm like, oh yeah, going to branching off that Kirk Soraka system or PJ Flex system, following his old coach there, and then once I just banged out the numbers, I was like, ugh, this is disgusting.
Yeah, so Herschel Turner, I think you already mentioned it. Nolan Ray.
I need to add Herschel Turner. That's a good call.
Another one that I'm starting to like, and you were talking about digging into the returning production. Mm-hmm. I'll post it here shortly. I've got something queued up on that kind of to prep for the Tadpole Bowl. But Ashley is a guy that I think I don't know if they'll still give him the ball on punt or kickoff returns, but he led the entire country. If you just look at stats, obviously he wasn't in the FBS last year, but he's a guy from Ball State that if he's the lead guy at running back and he's returning punts and kickoffs, which I somewhat doubt, but that could be pretty valuable in that league because I think he had 40. I calculated up. He would have scored 46, 47 points or something like that just from kickoff returns. Let's see here. Devon Booth is a guy that I like still. And then I don't know. I think people have the wrong guy in the TCU running back room. I still like Nate Palmer. I think Palmer and Payne are going to be the two guys, and whoever performs better is going to get the bulk of the carries. And I'm leaning a little more towards Palmer in that camp, but that's another room that I like. I like the look of.
I think it's going to end up being committee. I just don't think
It wouldn't shock me.
I think they have three good options between Palmer, Payne, and Barnes.
I'm also curious to see the Florida State running back room. That's probably one that you see Roydell Williams didn't go.
Yep. Gavin Sawchuk didn't go.
Davis didn't go. Sawchuk didn't go. That's another one where if
but I think
no one's willing to speculate.
I think that's the problem, though. We just named 4 or 5 guys that technically all have a case to make, right? Like even Roydell, who I don't think is a good back, like he's the most senior of that room. Cam Davis was a 5-star last year. Gavin Sawchuk's coming in as a new guy. Like he's who Gus Malzahn brought into this system. Chroma's another guy. It's a true freshman that's getting a ton of hype here. Like, I think we want to speculate, but there's just so many different ways that it could go.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Bud Elliott talked about it in the Florida State podcast, the summer school, that they basically said that it's going to be a committee, and they wouldn't be shocked if Chroma's the guy by halfway through the season, which I don't think is a stretch of the imagination, because quite frankly, I'm not a big Cam Davis fan. I know there are some guys who are. Roydell Williams is somebody that I have in the past been a fan of, but he just has not been very efficient.
Nope.
Sawchuk, I think we all, it could be a bounce back year for him, but we'll see what happens. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if he was the guy this year and then Chroma was the guy next year, but I've taken a couple when he transferred. I took a couple shares of Sawchuk right away just to kind of see if that was going to be a trend in drafts, and it hasn't been. People just haven't. They've just stayed away.
I think I took 1 or 2 shares when he first transferred there, because again, in my mind, I'm like, well, this is the one guy outside of Chroma that Malzahn's brought in. So clearly he sees something in Sawchuk that maybe they couldn't unlock there at Oklahoma. Wide receivers, to me, a bunch of guys here that I'm not surprised weren't taken, but a lot. It really just kind of shows there's a lot of fun upside guys at the end of the draft, like Jaden McGowan, speedy guy taking over that slot position. That's usually pretty productive in Tim Albin's offensive system there. Think of your oh my god, I can't like Coleman Owen last year. Who's the guy before, the former Ohio State wide receiver? Yes, Ben, Josh Cameron absolutely got drafted. What's the guy's name? Oh my god, I can't remember it off the top of my head now. I'm getting tired. You're losing me, y'all. God, what's his name? I'm going to be stuck on this until I find it out. Help me out, chat. Wigless. So like guys like that, right? Like McGowan's going to inherit that role this year, so I think he's a fun upside shot. Javon Tracy, I think I can't remember where this was being speculated. I can't remember if it's the Discord or if it was somewhere on Twitter, but somebody kind of pointed out that he could inherit that outside role that Daniel Jackson's had the last couple of years, and that's been pretty productive in terms of volume. And Tracy himself has been a pretty efficient guy. And obviously, he's been in the MAC, right? But that could translate pretty well even up to the Big Ten, so maybe he could be interesting. We talked about Chris Hunter. Cole Weaver at Miami of Ohio was getting a ton of hype on the G5 Hive podcast, and that's another MAC system that we've seen target the number 1 wide receiver. 2 options out of Virginia that could replace, that could end up replacing Malik Washington, and then who was the guy last year? See, y'all, this is where my battery is going down now. Who was the number 1 wide receiver for Virginia last year? Malachi Fields. So like Trell Harris and Jamal Edrine are 2 fun upside shots at wide receiver. Bo Sparks is actually my favorite wide receiver at Texas State. He didn't go in this draft. Again, just a lot of fun upside guys towards the end of drafts. What do you think, Eliot? Anybody stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, some guys that I still like and would absolutely take kind of in these last 5 rounds would be guys like Justin Bowick from Illinois.
Yep.
I think he's got a good shot at taking over for that kind of touchdown magnet role. Jordan Dwyer is another guy that, just from a system play, I really like. Eric Singleton's been one that he's such a talented individual, and he's at a team that, you would think, like, honestly, I think if you were asking people, fantasy or just college football analysts, to rank FBS wide receiver rooms, that Auburn room would be pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably their number 2 wide receiver, and yet he didn't go in a 30-round draft. So, I mean, that's surprising, but then again, we have to kind of wait and see it. The last few games of the year, they performed pretty well through the air, but we also got the Jackson Arnold situation, which I'm actually on board with him being, returning to, I wouldn't say glory, but returning to a prominent form here. Anthony Evans from Mississippi State. He's another guy that I think,
Yep.
I think he's probably going to land that slot role, or at least I anticipate him to. And I think that's a huge opportunity there. Derek McFall, kind of a bit of a potential cheat code there too.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Taylon Green, I think somebody's like the wide receiver room there is a little bit open. So Omega Blake is a potential late round grab. Let's see, who else do we got?
There's a lot of them.
We already mentioned Chris Hunter. Amari Thomas was a guy that, with Wigman, I was, planning on throwing a dart at him potentially. Zachariah Branch is another guy that I'm not a huge fan of Georgia receivers in general, but I could see him he's not going to be a top tier guy, but he's going to have I would expect him to have a decent floor. See here, another guy that I'm actually just this whole room I think is being overlooked a little bit is the Memphis room.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about it with some of our guys, and basically my favorite out of that group is Brady Cluse. He's been getting a lot of buzz. He's a fairly tall, I think he's like 6'2", 6'3" guy. Just basically has a shot to be that, kind of top outside guy. And in that system, I think that's a player you want. Victor Snow at Buffalo, kind of a lot of guys that are just, you're anticipating to be the guy at their program, but just not necessarily like a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm looking at. A lot of folks down here.
I know we don't have a lot of, go ahead.
I always say his name wrong, but Quasi Gilmer. I don't know why that one's hard for me to say, but Quasi Gilmer from UCLA is another guy that I kind of had on my list, along with Isaiah Hunter from Nebraska. So I'm just tying up loose ends at the back end of some drafts with guys like that.
I know we don't have a ton of information, but I am kind of surprised we don't see more people taking shots at the Southern Miss wide receivers. That is Blake Anderson's offense there. Right. And so, I get it. There's a ton of options that it could be. It's actually kind of crazy. It's almost like a West Side Story where you have a bunch of players coming in from Marshall, and then you have a bunch of players that used to be with Blake Anderson at Utah State and stuff like that. They're coming with him. And so, the receiver room's split down the middle between two different guys like that. But guys that I like there, like Carl Chester, Elisha Metcalf, those are guys I'm kind of leaning towards as being the guys that could... those are guys I'm willing to take shots on towards the end. Michael, we touched on the Tennessee running back room a little while ago. We both agreed that Deshaun Bishop's the guy that we prefer. But again, we expect more of a 1A, 1B situation compared to obviously what Samson got last year. As to where they should fall in the draft, again, I got Bishop in my top 30 running back, so I think he should be going pretty early on, but I drafted him in the 21st round. I like the value. So, I think that covers all the wide receivers. You got one or two tight ends for anybody that's looking for some late round options.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar Delp, Landon Thomas, Michael Smith, Garrett Oakley. I mean, those are kind of the guys that I still think have some value that are still on the board. Tight ends get pretty slim, though. I don't think the tight end group as a whole is very strong this year. And when you're drafting, basically 30 of them probably off the board plus, there's not a whole lot left that you feel good about.
Oakley took a big hit for me because, again, same deal with like a lot of the other teams. When I found out they only played 11 games, and boy, did that dropped him way down my rankings. Like when I started listing projections. Some guys I like that are still on the board. Matthew Hibner out of SMU. Obviously, we like RJ Maryland, but like Hibner performed pretty well down the stretch after Maryland went down. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if Hibner is the guy for a good chunk of the season while they just kind of slowly bring Maryland back. And then Ethan Connor, another guy that I think a lot of people forgot about because he got injured early on last year, but he had like 25 targets in like 6 games. Like he was a pretty solid. Or let me see. Let me see if I can find it real quick. He had 25 targets in a short amount of games. It might have been 4 games. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's another guy that I think people need to take a look out for, especially with there not being a clear, top wide receiver there at Troy as of right now. No, he had 15 targets in... How many games did he play? Oh, yeah, 15 targets in 4 games. So, decent amount of volume. So, all right. That being said, Eliot, I think it's time we go to bed. I think we've had ourselves a really good draft here. Did you find a team, by the way, that you wanted to shout out? I know you were kind of asking about that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I thought everyone had a pretty solid outing here. There's a couple of teams, though, that I repeatedly, as they were drafting, I was kind of, I don't know if they were looking at my queue or what, but Brandon Lepo, he drafting in the 3rd position there, he had a pretty good.
I love his first 6 picks. His first 6 picks are basically the kind of draft that I would have.
I mean, I honestly down to 8, round 8. He potentially could have, honestly, wide receivers 1 through 3. He could have running back, 2 of 3 probably of those guys potentially in the top 10. Potentially a number 1 passing quarterback in a 6-point passing touchdown league. And everyone's darling right now in Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. I mean,
I feel like I'm the last person.
Was good. The front half was good, but even in the back half, starting with Mestamaker and Sean Wilson, TJ Harden, Jace Brown is another guy that I pretty much, try and pair up with. I don't know why, but I try and pair him up with Avery Johnson. He double tapped the Wake Forest wide receiver room.
Double tapped the North Texas quarterback situation.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Shamari Lawrence. I think he's another late round running back that should be getting drafted more than he is. Yeah, so he was one. Plus, he took our favorite, Jaleel Farouk, in the last round, which I think is also. I mean, I probably should have taken him. I just have so many shares that I decided to let him hang. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say same on my end, although I will admit that his projection is kind of lowering a little bit more and more as I get less confident in him, mostly due to the fact that, again, he was injured for most of spring. So, like, I feel like he missed out on some valuable time there.
Yeah, if he's injured, that's his, like, he's either going to be relevant or not. There's no in between for him.
Agreed.
And then Buffalo Shoes was the other one that his team was one that I continually was kind of lusting over, I guess, a little bit. I just really liked it was a very well-rounded team. There were very few picks that he made that I wouldn't have made myself.
I definitely, again, we talked about Easton Messer at the beginning and how we didn't really love that. But, like, honestly, if you switched Purple Rain's first 2 picks, like Love in the first round, Messer in the second round, I still think it's early for Messer, right? But, like, I could stomach that a little bit more. And then the rest of it, like, I think he did a fantastic job. Right?
Sure.
Like, really, I wouldn't say until Peoples in the 12th round am I kind of raising my eyebrow a little bit, but that's also where Peoples has been typically going. So, like, I don't blame him there. Key, I love that pick. Talked about that. Ruben Owens, I don't really know what to make of that Texas A&M running back room right now, but I think Owens is the better shot than Le'Veon Moss there. I don't love the Miller Moss pick because again, he just doesn't project very well. Like, Jeff Brom quarterbacks have just not been very good the last couple of years. And then, again, I like some of these upside shots. Like, I don't personally like McClellan or Joseph or Knight, but, like, I don't blame you for taking your shot on a system. Like, that's exactly what he's doing. He's taking his guy out of each system.
Yeah.
And if he's right, he could be in for a lot of great stuff. I don't know who Galloway is. That's the new one for me. So
I like a lot of his picks as well. I'm the one position group there that I'm just not thrilled. I wouldn't be thrilled with would be the quarterbacks. But outside of that, I like everything he's got going on.
I'm trying to look up something real quick because in the chat, Brett asked about Smith, the wide receiver from Maryland, and that is he's referring to Octavian Smith. And for me, Brett, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, again, Smith he plays in the slot, right? Yeah, he plays in the slot. Ty Felton was on the outside for the most part, right? That's where Farouk would end up being. Smith's also just not as efficient as Farouk. He's got 10 yards per catch. He's got one of the lowest reception percentages on the team. What's his yards per route run? His yards per route run is less than 1. That usually does not translate very well year to year. And so even if he got more volume, like, I really wouldn't trust him to be as efficient enough. So I'm willing to take the shot more on Jalil Farouk. Yeah, he did get receiver of the spring, but again, a lot of that had to do with the fact that Farouk was hurt and he's kind of the veteran presence of that receiver room. So that's where I think that's coming from. I don't think it was actually because he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the next Ty Felton.
I was gonna say for me, it's 100% just the slot position. Like, I think he's gonna be one of their starting receivers in Octavian Smith. I think that's pretty, I would say, obvious. But he was almost exclusively in the slot. I think his wideout rate was almost non-existent, if I remember right. If you haven't, I don't have it in front of me, but
I gotcha.
It was really high. It was like 98% or something.
96.8. His out wide was 3.2%.
Yeah, it was very low, and his efficiency numbers were not great. His ADOT was super low, if I'm not mistaken. It was under 10 yards. I know that, which, I mean, for the slot position isn't terrible, but not great.
His ADOT was 8.5.
Yeah.
I almost read out Roman Hemby's ADOT, which is negative 0.8, and I was like, holy mackerel, I didn't know it was possible for a receiver to be negative ADOT. That's some Isaiah Williams stuff right there. And
then if you have it, his yards after catch weren't outstanding. Like, if that was up there a little bit higher, I'd be
5.1 yards after catch per reception.
Yeah.
That's lower than Hemby's, lower than Felton's, actually higher than Prather's. So he's got that going for him. But that's also, I think, why Prather went undrafted.
Yeah.
Did Prather go undrafted? I might be talking out of my butt there. But
I don't know. Literally, I've talked about this before, but the moment, so I'm not a C2C guy. The moment a player is no longer eligible, it leaves my brain. As far as the NFL is concerned, I don't follow it.
I will say it's fun. So I'm in one C2C league, and I kind of understand it now where, like, when a guy leaves college and he goes to the NFL, you still don't want to really drop him, even though he's an undrafted free agent that's probably going to get cut by the fall. Because, like, you're just like, maybe, just maybe, he might do something. I don't know. Let me see. Actually, I'm going to look it up. Let's not slander Caden Prather. Draft pick. Okay, he was taken by the Buffalo Bills in the 7th round. So good on you, Mr. Prather. Oh, and Maryland had 5 players taken in the draft. Nice. Nice. Good for them. All right. I think now we are at the end of our... I think I said that like 15 minutes ago, but now I think we're at the end of our draft. Eliot, this is awesome, man. Appreciate you for coming on. This is an absolute blast. Again, I think most of the people listening to this live stream already know who you are, given the fact that, again, you've been on CTN a couple times this year. But before you get out of here, man, like, let people know, what are you working on? What kind of stuff can they get by following you on Twitter, which you can do so, by the way, at Eliot Mays on Twitter. Eliot, what do you do, man?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a little bit of a lull, a little bit of a quiet spell. I've last week and then this week I posted a couple infographics that basically were just focused on scheduling and primarily looking at some good, I guess, pairings or kind of complementary matchups between, the top 8 quarterbacks and some of the guys you can get later in the draft that just have really, really good alignment as far as their schedules are concerned and matchup wise. And then this last week was running backs. Next week I'll have the wide receivers out as well. I'm still debating on whether I even want to do tight ends, because at that point it's kind of unnecessary to really evaluate that. Yeah. And then, like I said, I'm working on probably some content that'll revolve around the Tadpole Bowl and Underdog drafts. Tadpole Bowl kind of focusing in on what's different about that, being the scoring system there and kind of identifying what might be useful. And then with Underdog, that's something that I had a lot of fun doing last year. I didn't enter as many times as I'd like, but then again, I was pretty successful in the 12 entries I did have. I advanced on over 50%. So I was, at exactly 50%. So
Nice.
Something I want to try and build on and hopefully, and build some content around that as well. And then last is just, I was working on my prop tool. That's kind of been put to the back burner. It's just a lot of work. And it's a lot of time, some money as well. And so it's been a little bit slow going there, but, and then just working on, projections. I'm going to be helping, Zach Hall from Fantasy Points on, in-season projections this year, and want to kind of, dip my toe into that a little bit as well. Cause I think that's, like you said, being a little more data driven is something that's important. And, everything that we do, as analysts or content creators or whatever should be backed by some sort of data outside of just opinion.
Absolutely. Again, you can check out Eliot at Eliot Mays on Twitter. As to what's going on with us here at CTN, Brett just asked in the chat, is there a CTN show tomorrow? There will not be a CTN show tomorrow. There might be one midweek. Again, I'm still trying to figure things out. Again, my life's just been very busy recently, so I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. But we will definitely have a CTN show next week. We will not have a live show next week, but I'll be having Chris K on, and we're going to discuss some players that we have found very difficult to rank. I think that'll be a very good. I think that'll be a very fun conversation. A lot of interesting names out there. But we will not have a live draft next week. But 2 weeks from now, we will have on Mr. Josh Chevalier, the host of the CFF All Access Fantasy Points college fantasy show. I think that's the full name of it. I probably said those words in the wrong order. You guys know who Josh is. He's a great guy. He's going to be on here, so we're going to have a fun time with him in 2 weeks. But until then, appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. This has been an absolute blast. Y'all have a wonderful and blessed week. See y'all.